Well, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the April 2nd City Council meeting. And so the first item we have on our agenda is the land acknowledgement. And the City of Arcata acknowledges the lands we are located on that are unceded ancestral lands of the Wiyot tribe. The land that Arcata rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Gudini, meaning over in the woods or among the redwoods. Past actions by local and state federal governments removed the Wiyots and other indigenous people from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The City of Arcata acknowledges the Wiyot community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement seeks to aid in dismantling the legacy narrative of settler colonialism. So with that, we're going to stand for the flag salute. If you'd like to join us, you may. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Stillman,
Present.
Vice Mayor White,
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer,
Here.
Councilmember Atkins Salazar,
Here.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
all present.
Thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda after roll call is ceremonial matters. And so we're going to have a proclamation, recognition of Two-Spirit Celebration Appreciation Day, March 20th, 2025, and that'll be read by Councilmember Matthews.
All right, this is a proclamation in recognition of Two-Spirit Celebration and Appreciation Day. Whereas originating from indigenous communities of Turtle Island, the concept of Two-Spirit denotes a unique cultural identity that includes various sexual and gender expressions intersecting with indigenous LGBTQ+ identities and people who hold diverse, culturally significant roles in their respective communities. And whereas the term Two-Spirit was first articulated at the third annual Intertribal Native American First Nations Gay and Lesbian Conference in Winnipeg in 1990 as an umbrella term and organizing tool to center the diversity of gender identities and sexual expressions within Indigenous communities that have rich histories predating European colonization. And whereas Two-Spirit Celebration and Appreciation Day is already recognized in communities across Canada, including the City of Vancouver, the Province of British Columbia, and the City of Saskatoon, and by many Indigenous, Two-Spirit, and non-Indigenous community-based organizations across Canada, occurring annually on the spring equinox, symbolizing harmonious balance between length of day and night, and moving from a time of dormancy to a season of newness, growth, and light. And whereas because of community activism, determined advocacy, resilience, and talent, Two-Spirit people continue to reclaim and tear down systemic barriers set up to exclude them and serve as community, cultural, and educational leaders. And whereas there are 9 federally recognized tribal nations, along with a large community of Indigenous peoples from around the nation and around the world within Humboldt County, including those who recognize Two-Spirit people within their cultures and languages, such as the Wiyot tribe's term in Salituk of Gumel, which means both together. And whereas the City of Arcata celebrates the beauty and resilience of Two-Spirit people today and throughout history, recognizing that Two-Spirit people have a rich tradition of contributing in myriad ways to the betterment of our society, often working at the forefront of social justice activism and human rights. And whereas in Arcata, we believe in and reaffirm the inherent value of each resident of our community, including our Two-Spirit communities, individuals, and families without exception. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby declares Thursday, March 20th, 2025 as Two-Spirit Celebration and Appreciation Day and encourages all residents to learn about Two-Spirit traditions and communities today, summon the courage to stand up and speak out to interrupt racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia when it occurs, and listen with patience and empathy to create an environment for learning and understanding each other, regardless of what we look like, where we come from, or who we love. And I'd also like to recognize that Monday was Trans Day of Visibility, so This was dated April 2nd, 2025, signed by Alex Stillman, our mayor. And this is going to be accepted by Andy Martin and Parker Vassell, Queer Humboldt Program youth participants and co-leaders of the local Two Spirit Youth Art Group.
Osio Tohistu, Doado Skioi. I am a Cherokee, my name is Parker Vassell. I am a Cherokee Nation citizen and born and raised on Wiyot ancestral territory. As mentioned, Queer Humboldt youth participant, co-leader with Andy here for the Two Spirit-led art group, and as well as a tribal historic preservation officer with the Wiyot tribe and, artist, community member, and such like things. I cannot express enough how important it is to have this recognized, because throughout history, even just mentioned in the land acknowledgement, that we have been consistently attempted to be eradicated from the public eye. Our existence has been attempted to be wiped out for centuries, and the fact that we are able to stand here today and be recognized by important, valued members of our community is so incredibly important, and it proves that existence is resistance, and we are still here. We've always been here. Two Spirit is traditional, and we thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much.
In Shong Shen Da. Good, my friends. I am Andy Martin. I am of the Eel River Wailaki tribe, and I am also Sinkion. It is a very great honor that I get to stand up here and accept this proclamation with Parker. I am an artist. I am a youth leader with Queer Humboldt, and I am also just a community member. We, as Indigenous peoples, have been attempted to be silenced for hundreds and hundreds of years as soon as European colonial settlers have come. Not to mention, queer people have also been attempted to be silenced. And it is today, with the efforts of activists, of community members, of people with open hearts and open minds, that we get to accept this proclamation today and accept that being Two Spirit is traditional, being queer is traditional, and that we will never, ever go away. We have always been here, queer and indigiqueer since time immemorial. It brings me joy that I get to be part of a community that is so creative and so vibrant. Two Spirit people, being Two Spirit is not just an identity. Being Two Spirit is your role within your tribe and your community. And being part of a tribe whose cultural, traditional practices have been wiped out from colonialism, it brings me happiness to find my own medicine and to find my own role as a Two Spirit person within my community. And my role is to bring light and joy and art and laughter. And with a proclamation such as this just makes my job easier. But it is not going to be easy going forward, seeing as we have much legislature, past and present, trying to silence trans voices, trying to silence queer voices in general. And it is our job as community members, as queer people, as human beings, to fight this, because we deserve to exist too. Indigenous people deserve to exist on our land, which has been stolen. Queer people deserve to be able to express love in ourselves in a way that has been stolen from us. And I want to say thank you to Arcata City Council for making this an international holiday officially, and for giving us a community where we can freely express ourselves. Thank you.
And thank you. We have proclamation and recognition of 2025 Gotwick Day Spring Migration Bird Festival, April 17th through the 20th, 2025, and that will be read by Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you, Alex. For our Godwits for the Spring Migration Bird Festival, which will be April 17th through 20th, 2025, whereas about 96 million Americans enjoy observing, photographing, or feeding wild birds, and a 2022 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service study found that birdwatchers contributed about $107.6 billion to the U.S. economy, and whereas birding is the 15th most popular outdoor activity, just below bicycling, about 43 million birders take trips exclusively to commune with other birders or count birds by sight and sound. And whereas Godwit Day's Spring Migration Bird Festival showcases the area's rich diversity of birds, normally attracting tourists from all over the United States and makes Humboldt County a birding destination. And whereas Godwit Days has attracted over 350 registered participants in past years, with over 50% of whom came from out of the area. And whereas ecotourism continues to be an important contributing segment of the North Coast economy, Humboldt Bay, its rivers, estuaries, the region's mountains, coniferous forests, and rugged ocean coast habitat offer a variety of bird species for viewing that surpass the total bird species count of 40 different states and 10 Canadian provinces. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes the Humboldt County businesses and residents who are participating in the 2025 Godwit Days Spring Migration Bird Festival, as well as future birding visitors to the Pacific North Coast. May they be inspired to migrate back just as birds have been doing for centuries. And this is dated today, April 2nd, 2025, and signed by Mayor Alex Stillman. And this will also be accepted by Mayor Alex Stillman, Godwit Days Extraordinaire.
So thank you. Well, as the current chair of Godwit Days, I would like to thank the City of Arcata for their assistance. Godwit Days has continued the goal of the city to have ecotourism events to bring awareness to the importance of the natural environment where birds thrive. Pints for Nonprofit is tomorrow night at the pub, where leaders will gather to get their shirts and connect with other leaders who will be leading our trips. Big Sit is an all-day event at the Arcata Marsh Interpretive Center, and that means sitting in one place and recording the birds that you see throughout the day, and everyone is welcome to attend that. As of last week, we had 249 registrants. We had 147 that were local, 57 from California, and the rest, we have 47 people from various states throughout the nation. I want to thank you for this proclamation. Join Godwit Days at the Arcata Community Center on Friday the 18th at 5:30 at the welcoming reception, view vendors, and join up sign trips. So thank you. Yeah. And we have a great team that puts Godwit Days together every year. So thank you very much for this, and I'll be sharing it with them on Friday. Our next proclamation is a recognition of Week of the Young Child, April 5th through the 11th, 2023. It'll be written, I don't know why I keep saying written, but it'll be read by Councilmember Atkinson Salazar.
Thank you. So this is in recognition of the Week of the Young Child, April 5th through 11th, whereas North Coast Children's Services and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child from April 5th through 11th, 2025. And whereas children's cognitive, physical, social, emotional, and language and literacy development are built on a foundation of children's positive interactions with adults, peers, and their environment. And whereas participation in high-quality early childhood education saves taxpayer dollars, makes working families more economically secure, and prepares children to succeed in school, earn higher wages, and live healthier lives. And whereas high-quality early childhood education depends on early childhood educators who ensure that children, supported by families, have the early experiences they need for a strong foundation. And whereas North Coast Children's Services, founded as a parent cooperative in 1969, has served young children in our community for over 50 years, serving over 600 of our community's neediest children and families annually. And whereas NCS, Head Start, and Early Head Start and state-funded programs' success in improving the early learning outcomes rests in the leadership of parents and support from local businesses, municipalities, community members, and neighbors, as well as a skilled workforce. And whereas teachers and other helpers who make a difference in the lives of young children in Arcata deserve thanks and recognition, and public policies that support early learning for young children are crucial to the future well-being of our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes the week of April 5th through 11th, 2025 as the Week of the Young Child, and encourages our community to make an investment in early childhood education because early years are learning years. It's dated today, signed by our Mayor, Alexandra Stillman, and we have today the Executive Director of North Coast Children's Services, Rodney Oyen, who is here to accept this.
Yeah, well, thank you all. We so appreciate the support of the city. The city has supported us for, I think, as long as we've been here, probably, at least as long as I've been with North Coast Children's Services. And, you know, in many ways, through this proclamation, through support to families, and, you know, we serve families from Redway up to Orleans, out to up to Crescent City. And on May 2nd, we'll be doing an art show at our site here in Arcata at the main office across from the Creamery on the Arcata Playhouse. And I'd welcome everyone to come see and learn a little bit more about our programs and see the children's art. That's from 4 to 6. Thank you all for this. We appreciate it.
So a proclamation in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2025, will be read by Councilmember White.
Thank you. Whereas sexualized violence affects children, youth, adults, and elders of all genders from all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds with public health and social justice implications for every person in Arcata. And whereas staff and volunteers of the North Coast Rape Crisis Team provide 24-hour emergency response services to survivors and their significant others, and believes that prevention and intervention are essential to a healthy community. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual assault on their own, but can, through collaboration and partnership, work together to support those impacted, improve responses, and ensure that survivors are not re-victimized. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata reaffirms its commitment to the North Coast Rape Crisis Team and its values. Heal, H, help survivors by meeting them where they're at. E, empower them throughout their healing journeys. A, affirm their choices. And L, listen to and believe their truths, and acknowledges April 2025 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, dated April 2nd, 2025, by our Mayor, Alexandra Stillman. And this proclamation will be accepted by Maria Sepulveda, but I don't, oh, yep, there you are. Wonderful.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria Sepulveda. I work with the North Coast Rape Crisis Team. So first we would like to thank the Arcata City Council for your ongoing support of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, as well as our agency. And for over 50 years, NCRCT has been providing essential free services to survivors of sexual assault in our community. This has included a 24-hour bilingual line, accompaniment to evidence collection exams, support through law enforcement, criminal processes, crisis counseling, and financial assistance for survivors and their families. Last year alone, we assisted over 599 survivors here in Humboldt County, and these services are available regardless of whether the survivors are involved in the criminal justice process or when the harm has occurred. This work is not possible without our community partners, including law enforcement, district attorney's office, sexual assault nurse examiners, and tribal organizations. And we do continue to collaborate closely with the Arcata High School Check-It Club, who are dedicated to combating sexualized violence on their campus through education and promotion of the bystander intervention strategies. However, if looming funding cuts from the Victims of Crime Act and threatened federal freeze of grant funds do occur, it will become impossible for our agency to function and serve survivors or participate in such programs. So we do need your help to ensure that survivors continue to receive the care they deserve. It is imperative that our community be heard and say that this is unacceptable, and that we come together to honor our survivors. So if you would like, please visit our website at ncrct.org to make your voice heard with our state and federal representatives and support our ongoing fundraising efforts. And thank you again for supporting our work and the survivors that we serve. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. So the next item is the report from commissions or committees, and we have none this evening. So we'll go on to staff reports. All reports shall be specifically limited to city business and shall not request or lead to action by the council at this meeting. There seems to be none. We'll go on to oral communications, oral and written communications, and this is early time limited. The city council values your comments. The public comment period allows people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. This early section of public comments is limited to 15 minutes. Speakers are limited, one or the other, to 2 minutes each. If you prefer to have a full 3 minutes, please wait until the end of the meeting where you'll be able to do that. And that's under item number 12. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss, take action on any items not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. There will also be a time provided for public comment specific to each item when that item is being reviewed by the council. So, we have a line up.
Okay.
One other thing I just wanted to mention, we've had some disruptive behavior. Did I turn it off? Sorry. We had some disruptive behavior in the past, so we would like everyone to be kind and courteous to everyone and not call anyone out by names or etc. So I expect everything to be fine, so I'm not going to read the rest of it. So we'll start with our first speaker, and go ahead.
I'm wearing my humankind hoodie that I got from an organization called Wear the Peace, and it says humankind be both, so that's me. I'm working on the kind part. I'm definitely human. I'm not going to stay for the rest of the meeting. It's another Shine a Light on Palestine film night at the Minor, and they're showing a film called From Ground Zero, and I will be leaving to go to that. I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in 2 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Dogs will come later at another meeting, but I did attend HTA meeting this morning, and I know that at the end of this month, Vance will be leaving as an employee of the city, and there will no longer be anybody employed at the transit center in Arcata. I think the transit center is vitally important at this point in time, and I do hope it doesn't get used as something else for a little bit of time so we can really see how important it is and figure out a way to utilize half that building at least to transition without a staff person there. So please, I'm a bus rider, and it's really important to me that the Arcata Transit Center not disappear completely. I just want to say that. I guess philosophically, with all that's going on in the world, and I really appreciate all the eloquence of these people speaking about the proclamations, I just want to read something. When a complex system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos have the capacity to shift the entire system to higher order. Arcata can be that island of coherence, peace, nonviolence, compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please. Someone please move forward. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Stillman. My name is Scott McBain. I work on the corner of 7th and J Street in downtown Arcata. And I just wanted to bring up an issue. We've had a lot of vehicle collisions at that intersection, the 7th and J, over the years. And kind of most recently, we had another T-bone last week that sent a young kid's head through the window. It's been a recurring problem there because people are driving too fast on 7th Street. And it's right where the school bus stop is for the housing project there. And so we've kind of needed a stop sign there for a long time to slow down traffic on 7th Street. And I just wanted to say the city installed stop signs there this week. So I just wanted to give, big kudos to the city, Councilmember White and Mayor Stillman and the city engineer to make this happen. It's just great to see that happen. The neighbors are very happy to see this. And I think in the long run, it's going to reduce a lot of injuries. We've seen a lot of accidents there, and we have like daily near misses there. A lot of property damage just from damaged cars, and at some point there's going to be a fatality there because the cars are getting shoved into the, into the pedestrian areas in the school bus stop. So anyways, I just wanted to thank you very much for solving this problem. It's been a long time coming, and I really appreciate it.
So what I would like to say to you is thank you very much for bringing that forward to us and the other things you've been helping out with the city. But I think it was really valuable, and that we were able to see that it meets all the qualifications for stop signs, which will be permanent soon. But thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Sean. I'm here to present on the idea of a sister city in Gaza City, and I think that now's the time to move forward the conversation about how to make the two maybe votes into yes votes. We have 2 yes votes. It sounds like for the sister city, and we've already passed a ceasefire resolution for Palestine. So, let's talk about this. The demands for a sister city have only grown stronger since we initially put forward the idea. The opposition votes have been disappearing. There's still overwhelming support for it. We're building our petition drives, and we're happy to be part of this. So we have the moral imperative has only grown stronger since we started, including because the Israeli has just recently voluntarily broken the ceasefire and is starved, cut off aid, water, and is bombing with bombs supplied by the U.S. that are even more destructive from before the ceasefire. So we reached out to the Gaza City municipality. They're really enthusiastic to move forward on this. We've provided over 700 hot meals to the people of Gaza City and the surrounding area, water tanks, also this event here that just happened. The last day was today, Eid celebration for children, and just really happy with this event. Here's that banner in the background behind these children here, and here's a young girl who has this thing that says from the children of Gaza City to the children of Arcata, and here's another here, and so we have the two events coming up to send Shay to Palestine. So I hope you can check those out.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Isaac. I'd also like to voice my support for the Arcata sister city in Gaza. Israel, shutting down all of their basic human services with America's military support is just it's just horrendous, and it needs to stop now. And we need to do everything we can to help the people of Gaza and of Palestine, because we're people and they're people too, and they deserve basic human rights just as we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next, please.
Hello, greetings, City Council. My name is Eli. I'm mostly here to support the process to allow Arcata to become a sister city with Gaza. I think it's a very exciting opportunity. I think about what it means to be a sister city between Arcata and Gaza. It means the belief and hope that there is a Gaza in the future. I can imagine a future where, because being a sister city, you're able to do like cross-cultural, exchanges. And, Arcata, we have a rich agricultural history that we can meet with folks over there in Gaza and do some really interesting conversations and projects. And when it comes to fishing, I can imagine that'd be a really beautiful moment. I guess another thing I just kind of want to share real quick. I mean, I really praise, Arcata when it comes to what it's done so far, especially when it comes to, recognizing the movements of indigenous groups, right? We just started this meeting, recognizing, two-spirit indigeneity. And I always kind of think about, 200 years down the line, will Zionists and do land acknowledgements? Will they have their own, holidays? And I don't think we need to wait 200 years in order to address a genocide. So I think it's just an exciting opportunity to, have Arcata really, in this little corner of the world, make a global impact. So it'd be awesome. I'd be proud if y'all move forward with it. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I know you want to clap, but it would be just as wise not to, but go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Pat. This is about Palestine. It's basically a red alert. The leaders of Israel, being confident that the U.S. or any other Western nation will hold them accountable or capable of stopping them, they have announced that they will annex and colonize the West Bank. They announced that. They also said that they would disarm Hamas, have its leaders leave Gaza, and will go along with Trump's migration plan, a Riviera in Gaza. This is a total ethnic cleansing. And the only Arab nation brave enough to help Israel are the Yemenis, for they're doing everything they can to help a people who are being massacred. They are the little engine that could, and I honor them. Palestinians have been living there for thousands of years, but when the British Empire overthrew the Ottoman Empire, they acquired Palestine, and they decided, in their white supremacist wisdom, to give over half of Palestine to Zionists, even though they were only 1/3 of the population. And the Zionists then bragged to the Arab population living there that they would make a Zionist nation and that the Arabs would be second-class citizens. And you wonder why the Arabs hate Zionists. Israel is assassinating babies, women, children, assassinating journalists to prevent the world from seeing their atrocities, but the world is seeing it and seeing Israeli soldiers laughing while they kill, bomb, and starve Palestinians. The Zionists are destroying any kind of honor that the Jewish people had, and I fear what the world will do. I do not know how long Israel will have its big brother, the U.S. empire, to back them, for the empire itself is falling apart thanks to Trump and Signalgate. The least we can do is host a sister city to help the Palestinian people. For the U.S. and Israel, they bomb aid workers. They found aid workers in a grave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tricia Murphy. Yeah, there was over 40 aid workers from Red Crescent and another group, and that's just a day in the life of what it is to be in Gaza and to be under the brutal regime that is Israel. Our First Amendment rights are getting stomped right now. I don't know if you've noticed, but people are getting hauled off. College students are being told that if they don't fall into line and stop criticizing the policies of Israel, that they're going to be pushed out of school. It's already happened. Good people have been fired. To criticize Israel is conflated into anti-Semitism, and it's a joke. It's a joke. Everybody knows what's going on. I went over and I listened to Jared Huffman, and he made a sarcastic remark about how, well, maybe it wasn't such a good idea for thousands of people not to vote for Kamala Harris, as if those people who didn't vote, if you were in Nazi Germany and you were supporting Hitler, and people told you that to criticize the Nazis is a crime. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm so upset about what's happening right now. We're getting ready to bomb Iran. We're getting closer to a nuclear war every day, and we're doing it on Israel's behalf. Supporting Israel is to our detriment. It's getting us more isolated every day. We're losing our First Amendment rights of speech and assembly. And the Palestinians are getting slaughtered. I listened to a surgeon talk about a baby's face who was blown off, and they have no anesthesia for that baby. And to listen to that baby scream. And this happens en masse all day, every day in Palestine, in the West Bank, where Hamas is not even at.
Thank you very
And why not support a sister city? Is there a problem with bias here?
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, thank you so much for having this public comment period. I'm here also to support the sister city idea with Palestine. I've been on the faculties of political science at both institutions of higher learning in this county, at CR and at Cal Poly. And I'm overwhelmed with emotion, like many of us, about what's happening now that we are participating. Our tax money is going to one of the biggest genocides of recent history, which is particularly cruel. And we have an opportunity to stand up, and you have the opportunity to vote for this. And if you don't like the sister city idea, I can understand that. Please put forth something that says opposition to this genocide. We can do that. There are many instruments which are exactly for municipalities giving statements of opinions to the federal government. It's not unprecedented. Please do something. I believe that we can. I want everybody here really quickly to think about everyone that you know that lives in either Eureka or Arcata. Think about all of them. And then think that of all of them being dead. Because the population of Eureka and the population of Arcata is less than, combined, it's less than the number of people who have already been killed. And that's just people who have been killed. The people who have been tortured and have had their mothers and fathers taken away is something else. But the entire population of both Eureka and Arcata has already been killed. Let's not let this
very much.
go on. Thank you so much.
Mayor Stillman, we're at 15 minutes for the time limit for early oral communication.
Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Well, we're still at the time limit. We're at 15 minutes. We had 8 speakers.
Or 15 minutes altogether. Thank you for keeping track. Okay, we'll go on to the consent calendar, which all matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If the discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and are considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members can request that an item be removed for specific discussion. Members of the public may comment on any item remaining on the consent calendar in the comment period before the vote. Approval to waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only of any ordinance on this agenda. B, approve the minutes of the City Council of March 19th, 2025. C, biweekly report on disbursements. D, determine the Carlson Park skate bot, well, it's called SPOT, project exempt from CEQA per section 15303. Award the contract to Primary Concrete in the amount of $92,500. Authorize Environmental Services Director to increase contract by 10% and authorize the city manager to execute any documents. E, adopt a CEQA exemption for 2025 joint slurry project, approve plans, and award contract to Intermountain Slurry Seal, Inc. for $614,160.26. Authorize city engineer to increase contract, excuse me, by $350,756.62, and authorize the city manager to execute documents. Is there anything on the consent calendar the council would like to remove? Yes.
Yes, item D. And I don't necessarily need it removed. I just wanted to make a comment, if that's okay. It's been a long time coming, all of these wonderful improvements in the last 5 years. And this skate park is going to wrap it all up, and we're just thrilled, excited, over the top. And just wanted to thank the city for that.
Okay, thank you. Is there any item on the consent calendar that someone would like removed?
E, please.
E, okay. Can we have a motion for items A, B, C, and D on the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion to accept items A, B, C, and D of the
All
consent
right,
calendar.
is there a second?
I will second that, contingent that we take public comment. No.
Yes, and is there any public comment on any of these items on the agenda that we're going to vote on? Okay, seeing no one, may we vote? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, number E, Councilmember?
I just pulled that because I was wondering, I know there's been a little bit of a back and forth with staff and CRTP, as to if this is a complete streets project or not. And I just, I've been, reading the back and forths and would love to hear about it.
Yeah, and specifically the comment that you're speaking to is, I think we had Colin Fisk from the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities make a comment, and the request was really to change the striping and consider other enhancements when we're doing the slurry seal project, and that it should be subject to the city's complete street policy. And our assistant engineer, David Case, sent him a response, and the slurry project is really a maintenance project. The slurry project is really a very thin overlay to extend the pavement life, and it's a project that's coordinated over all of the county jurisdictions. And so as a routine maintenance project, it's not, the determination's been made that it's not subject to the complete street projects. But that said, if there are opportunities to update striping to other standards, then we would certainly look to do that. If there's easy improvements that we could make, we might consider it, but there's not a full design. So the way these projects are set up, the project's bid to replace the striping in kind. So there's not a full level of design. It's really a maintenance project that's focusing on adding the slurry to extend pavement life and replacing the striping in kind. If we were to design a project, it would take a significant amount more effort to be able to put that through rather than replacing existing striping. And we have David here. David, if you had anything to add, feel free to come up. If that covers it, then.
Well, and I think, and maybe you can address this too, David. I know, I think when we did H Street, I think that was just supposed to be a pretty simple project, but then we recognized that there was a block of a bike lane missing, and so we went ahead and decided to add that bike lane in. And so I just want to make sure, even though it might be a simple project, that we're not missing any opportunities.
Sure, and we can look at that kind of like Merritt said. If there is, let's say, a crosswalk that has a little bit heavier traffic, we can do some enhanced crosswalks to make it more increased visibility at some of those locations. But really, the slurry project is truly just meant to maintain and preserve the asphalt and to keep it from continuing to deteriorate over the years. So if there's opportunities to do new striping, we can look at it. But as for changing things around significantly, it often requires a lot more design and thought to put into it. So again, these projects are primarily for maintenance, and we're not intending to change geometry or anything like that.
All right, thank you.
Is there more comment and discussion?
We have one commenter on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Colin, please go ahead.
Good evening. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. I appreciate you pulling this for discussion. We do believe that this project should be subject to the Complete Streets policy because it does require restriping, and therefore provides an opportunity to change some of the simple features of the street that could improve safety. And so a couple of things that I think are important to call out as potential improvements. One is just to mark unmarked crosswalks, of which there are quite a few, and to do that with high visibility markings. Again, that doesn't really require any additional planning. And I also want to point out that on Gentoli, which is one of the streets affected, the Transportation Safety Committee has recently been discussing the possibility of a restriping plan there that would just remove the two-way turn lane and replace that with buffers, painted buffers for the bike lanes. And again, that doesn't require anything more than striping. So want to strongly encourage the city to take this opportunity in line with the Complete Streets policy to make some of those simple upgrades. Again, high visibility pedestrian crosswalks where those do not currently exist, as well as bike lane upgrades on Gentoli Lane. And also, there's been some discussion about the possibility of removing some of those downstream crosswalks on H Street, as was done on G, and I want to strongly caution against that. I think that was a mistake, although well-intentioned, and does actually increase safety risk for pedestrians. So please encourage you to add crosswalks anywhere that you'll be restriping and not remove any. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Stillman, in just one comment, I'd just like to encourage Mr. Fisk to continue to stay in touch with city staff, and to the extent we can think about things and work with them where they make sense. He's had good recommendations in the past, and we'll continue to listen to those recommendations and consider them.
So I think one of the concerns was with crosswalks, that we don't always have them at both, over there you have it, and then you don't have it here. And so you expect people to walk over and cross and not. And I think that's one of the things I read that he was interested in, is making sure that we had crosswalks where they should be, and not just, there's a word for it, further on or something. What is it?
He said downstream, so I'm just gonna go with Colin's lingo, but.
So thank you. So comments, please, from the council? Stacy, anything else?
No, I'll make a motion to approve item E.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is old business. It's A, introduce ordinance number 1575, an ordinance the City Council of the City of Arcata amending the land use code to update affordable housing zoning, waive reading of the text, and consent to read title only. We have a presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Stillman. My name is Joe Mateer, Senior Planner here at the City of Arcata. This evening before you is the consideration of Ordinance 1575, Land Use Code text amendments to add affordable housing language. Chapter 9.31 is existing code. It's the density bonus that is required by state law. And what we're doing here with this ordinance is updating it to make it more current. We adopted that in 2008, and it's time for a refresh of that to make it more consistent with state law. One of the things we're doing with that is referencing state law. So if that state law changes downstream, we don't have to necessarily come back for an ordinance revision to that. So we can just reference that. Chapter 9.32 is inclusionary zoning. This is new. It is all new text. This is allowed by state law, but is not mandated. Whereas the density bonus, the City of Arcata is required to offer that, as all jurisdictions in the state of California. The inclusionary zoning of Chapter 9.32 is something that the city has chosen to proceed with. Under the first, it was identified in the housing element, and then it was identified also in the General Plan 2045. I know the council's very familiar with these two, so I'll keep my comments brief. Basically, those two sections of 9.31 and 9.32 are opportunities to increase affordability to persons of lower income. And by doing so, the density bonus, that's voluntary. A developer would ask to do that, and the city would allow them to develop at a higher density the number of dwelling units that would necessarily be allowed for that development project. The density bonus does include incentives and concessions to encourage that. The inclusionary zoning is a little different, and it was kind of, the city is going that route, or may consider that route, as a method to provide affordable housing when we have market rate developments. Because the density bonus is voluntary. The inclusionary zoning would make it required, as written in the ordinance, when there's 30 or more dwelling units proposed at a project, it would be required that they have that. And so there's a little bit of a higher increase in the number of units that would be allowed above the base density with the inclusionary zoning as an incentive for people to really encourage and provide those affordable housing opportunities. Staff recommends the City Council consider adoption of Ordinance 1575, waive reading of text, and continue the item to April 16th, 2025 for adoption. I'm available. David Lawyer, Director of Community Development, is available for any questions that the council may have.
And before we go to questions, I just wanted to clarify our recommendation is to introduce the ordinance, not to adopt it. So as it reads in the.
But if you introduced it at this time and then
And
next
then we
council
adopted
meeting,
it.
then you would adopt it.
Exactly.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from council? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Elephant in the room question. Because I know, we went through this a lot and discussed with the Planning Commission and did all this with Gateway. The world has changed since then a slight bit, and I was just wondering if you see or hear anything in your planning and housing circles just about how, if we are going to see any impact on programs like this with a reduction in federal funding for programs through HUD, for grant fundings that often get affordable projects built, and how that might impact this decision.
Yeah, one of the differences between our affordable housing program heretofore, which has really been reliant on grant funding, and the ideas behind density bonus and inclusionary zoning type projects, is that those projects would largely be borne by the cost of those projects would largely be borne by the private developer. And with the inclusionary zoning requirement, you set the numbers of units that would be produced once it's triggered at a fairly low number. So it's 3% of the total project count for a very low income, 6% or 6% if they want to do units that are restricted for low income. And then in addition to that, there would be 10% that would be restricted for market rate. So it's a very small number of units that are actually affecting the overall return on investment for these projects. And those costs would largely be borne by the private developers. So it's not to evade your question, but it's just a slightly different way of trying to get that affordable housing. And I'll just remind the council that the idea behind this really garnered a lot of momentum when there was concern about gentrification in the Gateway and other areas where, if the housing development was really geared towards higher end housing, we'd be displacing people who are currently there and that sort of thing. And so the inclusionary zoning was a way of making sure that new projects will continue to provide some affordable housing, some housing affordable to lower income folks as well as moderate income folks.
Thank you, David. And yeah, I think that's an important point in the sense that if we do see a loss of grant funding opportunities for projects like this that are getting built completely out of grant funding, then we need a way to try to have, developers include that in their projects. So that satisfies my question, and I'll let other folks go.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to the fact that it's really incumbent on us to be able to create all kinds of housing, which includes moderate and above moderate housing. And I know that we do have another low-income housing project in the work, if I'm not mistaken. And I sit on this housing policy committee, and I just keep seeing all of these bills that are coming down the pipeline, just, again, making things more ministerial and kind of removing all sorts of roadblocks for developers. And so I don't know really what my question is, but I do think that we do have a responsibility, if we want to attract, more doctors and another police chief or some executive level positions, if, we should concentrate on kind of removing roadblocks to build any kind of housing.
I was wondering if you, I think, I don't know, I didn't ask for this ahead of time, so it's probably not going to be available, but if the arena number chart happens to be up, or you might actually be able to.
It was in our last packet.
Well, I was on
I know,
I was
I
on
have it right
vacation.
here.
Okay.
Everyone's gonna give it to you.
Okay, well, she's researching for me. When I first really understood about inclusionary zoning was when we were talking about gentrification and how that's a tool to combat that, and so I'm very interested in that. But if it was back when we were talking about, to me, my memory of it, very large buildings that would have lots of residents in them. And so, yes, like that makes sense to offer, if you're building a complex with a couple hundred units, it would be great to have different types of income in those buildings. And it would be possibly more feasible, I think, for developers to set aside space and also keep up with the paperwork that's involved in keeping folks of lower incomes in those. So I do think I'm interested in it on a larger scale, and I don't know, to me the number 30 seems very small. I don't feel like that's the way I was introduced to it. It wasn't about smaller buildings, it was about the larger ones, and I do support it for that. I do think 30 is a lower number, and the reason I asked for the RENA numbers, these are our regional housing needs, and so what I was recently, when I zoomed in for the meeting last month, I was at a conference, a transportation conference, and these housing numbers came up quite a bit. And whenever I would engage in conversation about them, Arcata was the only town that is overproducing in the very low and low and moderate, and not in the above moderate, which was, people were astounded at how well we were doing, which is great. And I don't want to go backwards on that, but we do have a need for all types of housing. That keeps being reiterated to us. And so if you look at our numbers, in very low, we're 118% completed, low 95% completed, moderate 130% completed, above moderate 40% completed. So there is a gap, and I wouldn't want to do anything to prohibit buildings of any type. So that's just, so I don't know what that number looks like. I think 30 to me is low. I mean, we will be hearing public comment, which will be great, but that's just, those are my starting talking points.
Yeah, I'm wondering, how does it, if we're building triplexes or fourplexes, how does that affect inclusionary zoning?
Currently in the draft, the trigger is 30 units or above 30 units, I think is what it says. And so you would have to have 31 units in your project before it would trigger. So a fourplex or a sixplex wouldn't be required to provide any inclusionary housing.
So I am really proud of what Arcata has done in meeting our RENA numbers, and to the point of what our other council members have said is that we need more above moderate. We've actually even have covered moderate fairly well. We're getting close. I'm thinking about a developer, and I'm kind of changing, and I definitely flip-flopped on this, but we were talking about, we lowered the number to actually 15, now it's back to 30, which I think is maybe low. And as much as I'm always advocating for those who have less. I'm thinking about whether it's going to pencil out. We have a developer who just completed 22 units out in Valley West on Valley East. And their input was that had this triggered them, that they would not be able to build. And so housing, we need housing, and we need all kinds of housing. But right now, it looks like we want to attract, we have a huge issue with medical providers and doctors and all of these things, but there's nowhere for them to live. And so I think that we need to kind of focus a bit on that. And so the trigger, maybe it is small, and we maybe need to go a little bigger. I don't know what my fellow council members are thinking on that. It's definitely different than from what I had originally, but, you know, things have changed. And then we have the Craftsman Mall coming also, which is going to be rather significant.
Okay, so is it my turn? Okay, so I'd like to see us not have any statement of inclusionary zoning in this. I feel like in 2012, the city council removed inclusionary zoning because they had no longer a subsidy, because the redevelopment agency had been dissolved. And so it's been 13 years since then. And we've gone through the gateway, we've done so many things, we've gotten the general plan updated. But I think that when we think about, I know there's a fear of what's going to happen as far as the Cal Poly dorms at Humboldt, and they don't know how that's going to affect housing. I hear that quite a bit. But I think, nevertheless, we need to have another level of housing in Arcata, because we need people that can actually afford to live here and to be able to support our services. And we just can't, and we've done a fantastic job about dealing with, as Stacy mentioned, our lower, in the lower part of the arena numbers, but we really need to move above that. And I'm sure we'll get an award for being outstanding if you got all that feedback from the HCOG meeting, or whatever your COG meeting was, but that we will probably get an award for being so out there. But we certainly won't be able to do anything about the people that would like to live here and are unable to live here. And so I did some research today, and you know, I did hear that, this sounds pretty outrageous, but I heard today that Danco is building one-bedroom apartments in San Jose at the cost of $1 million per one bedroom, and then they're able to rent it out for $800 a month. But then that's because they have all these subsidies and money coming in. And then I looked at an average building with the building cost per square foot of being $400 for a upper mid-range, and that would equal about $600,000 per unit. And let's say you had a 50-unit mid-rise building with high-quality materials, that would be equal about $30 million just to build that. And I would like to have us have an opportunity with our new planning that we have, and you know, gentrification, I understand that in the gateway, but gentrification might be the storage units, might be the car wash, it might be AmeriGas, and there's no one living in any of those. And so that's not going to really cause an issue for those specific properties. But I would like to see us not have inclusionary zoning, and to wait for 2 to 5 years and see if we get any housing starts. And if we get housing starts and we say, oh my gosh, we have so many housing starts and the building department is so busy and he can't figure out what to do anymore, because I understand there aren't very many building permits even there at this moment, then we can go back and look at and revisit inclusionary zoning and see if there's what we need to do. I doubt if the redevelopment agency will come back to help us, but nevertheless, I really think it's a way to preclude, put fear. We have fear with the Cal Poly dorms. Let's not create fear with possibly people that want to develop in Arcata. And let's see what we can get. And we know we need people that want to live here, can buy things, go shopping, you know, get a new mattress or whatever. And I think it's really important for us as far as our bases, our sales tax, our general community. And with the growth of Cal Poly, possibly we'll have places for people to actually, that work there, to live here and not to have to go to, well, this is not have to go, but have to, only place they can find that they could actually live is McKinleyville or Eureka or somewhere else. And we should nurture them and try to bring them here into our community. So that's where I stand. I will vote no on inclusionary zoning to be really, truly, that you know where I'm coming from.
So that is actually a really good point that Mayor Stillman makes, is that throughout the whole Gateway Area Plan process, throughout the whole general plan process, we have always said, you know, this is a living document. This is something that we can always revisit. This is something we can always hit the pause button on, go back, reassess, you know, dial back or dial forward. And, you know, as of now, with nothing being built, I think that this is a great opportunity to kind of remove roadblocks and barriers, see if we get any projects in the work, and, you know, if it turns out that we need to revisit this, then, you know, let's do what we have been doing for all of the other facets that we have said, living document, we can come back, we can revisit.
Can I ask a quick question? How many units does density bonus trigger at? Is it 40 something?
No, the density bonus can be triggered at any number.
Okay.
And so, and the state law has recently been revised, in fact, so that the density bonus can be requested at less than maximum density. So if someone comes in and they want to, you know, trigger it at half the amount of density that's required under that, or that's allowed under that zoning district, they can do so. They would be providing the number of affordable units that are allowed for under, or required under density bonus, but then they would get the concessions and incentives associated with that.
And do you have an average, I'm sorry, were you finished? What, do you have any idea what like an average rent for an above moderate housing would be? I know that we've seen charts before.
Yeah, it really depends on the unit size, but you know, I kind of, you know, if I'm shooting from the hip, just to give you a sense, I would say, you know, 1 bedroom, you're talking somewhere in the range of about $1,000, 2 bedroom, $1,500, 3 bedroom, and yeah, these are probably low. These are the numbers that are coming out of HUD for fair market rents for our area, and I think as we all know that those are low.
So I'm sorry, the buildings on Valley East, which I've toured and which are lovely, what are those? Are those considered, where did those? What are those?
Oh, I wouldn't you consider them luxury?
That's what they call them, luxury.
Oh, well, that's because they're I was going to say one of our nicest properties in
Yeah,
Arcata.
because those are nice. What are those? They're market rate. And so what are those renting for?
I don't know how much they're renting for.
I think I remember them being fairly reasonable. Yeah. Okay.
And the studios were about 1,200.
Your mic.
11. I believe the studios were around, not quite 11.
And so that's new construction, but we have in Arcata, because we have a limit now to housing, people are able to charge whatever they think they can get. And that's been a constant, and that's been going on for a number of years now. So I think that when we get more housing, it'll change around what happens with pricing of other housing that we have now. And they claimed years ago, and maybe David remembers this, that you should have at least a 5% vacancy in your town so that you have an opportunity to choose between this one, that one, and you look at that you just don't say, oh my God, I've got to take this because there's nothing else. And that we'd have 1% or less vacancy. So I think it's really important for us to have housing so there's choices instead of having no choices. You just have to take what you get, and you start talking to people about that, you'll find that's actually what happens. And I am so under rented when you say $1,500 for a 2-bedroom or whatever, $1,000 for a 1-bedroom. My tenants should be really happy that they have what they have in good condition. So anyway, how do we want to proceed? Because there is. Okay.
So I had a couple of conversations with Director Loya because I was trying to come up with a number that I felt comfortable with, because I feel like there was a lot of discussion about inclusionary zoning, and as we talked, there was enough discussion that it's been put forth in some of our plans to the state. And I'm going to let Director Loya explain a little bit about that, which you were talking to me about, just that it's part of our housing element. And so if we were to say we're not going to do any, I'm just wondering what that would mean for us. Because I'm not opposed to having, I think it should be a high number, or I'm fine without a number, but I think that could be problematic to not have inclusionary zoning. Could you weigh in on that for us, please?
And we're also joined tonight by our legal counsel. And so I know, Nubia, we haven't talked about this previously, but if you have something to add here, I'd appreciate that. But it's my understanding that HCD would be looking to ensure that the city is delivering on, the programs that it outlined in its general plan. So completely eliminating inclusionary zoning would potentially draw some sort of enforcement. I'm sorry.
Quick thought on that. I think it would draw probably unwanted and unnecessary attention and call into question some of the city's goals in terms of, reaching its affordability requirements. So that's a factor I think that the council can consider.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
so
good information to have. Thank you for asking that question, Stace.
So I think that, setting a, it's in the general plan with I believe we put it as the first year implementation. At the time when the, council was considering the general plan, I think my marching orders were get this done in 3 months. We were just about ready at that time. We're about, 6 months out now. So, but I think if the council wanted to revise the schedule, I think we could explain that. So I want to make sure that you have the options, but, certainly if we decided, look, we're just not doing this, I think we'd draw some, as our attorney described it, unwanted attention.
I'm unclear on what Nubia said, or what you said too. You're saying, I could see if we have the density bonus and we have to do that because that's state law. But if we chose not to have inclusionary zoning, who says that we have to have that as a requirement?
We did. We already said we were going to do it. And we put our planning commission to work to do it.
I know, so you're saying our plan, our attorney is saying our plan would no longer be valid if we excluded that? Or that we'd be in trouble with the state?
Good evening, Mayor. On that note, I wouldn't say that it invalidates it because of course it's got to go through the approval process and consideration through HCD, but I think it could call into question the city's intent in moving forward consistent with the action that it's taken, and will call into question the real goals and how to implement them. So again, it's a policy decision that the council can take. Again, it doesn't come without its possible challenges. And of course, there's several, there's the back and forth with HCD to consider the changes. But from the path that the council has gone, I think we'd have to demonstrate that there's some overarching program that would reach essentially the same goals. And by taking away the inclusionary housing component, which again, at this juncture and going down this route, could cause some challenges. Again, it doesn't automatically invalidate it, but it could lead to potential problems with the approval process.
Okay, I know Kimberly has a question. I have one other. Okay, I wasn't going to ramble. I was just going to ask. So we have 30 units. If we changed it to 50 units, would we be in violation of something?
We did put a target in the general plan, but I think that if we modify that based on current conditions, again, I think that, it would have to be, a conversation I don't want to say that, because of that policy indication, had a threshold that you're necessarily tied to that. I think if we decided to eliminate it and not do it at all, we'd have, a harder conversation with HCD if they choose to take this up than if we just choose to modify that threshold.
So if we did what we said we were going to do, what we adopted, and in a year we weren't getting anything developed, then could we revisit and say, we tried this, nobody's, putting forth any projects, then would it be a good, then it would be okay to revisit it and kind of wiggle?
Yeah, I think that I think as Nubia said, this really is a policy decision, and you should set your policy based on what you feel like is best for, our local decision-making process and for our community. And yeah, we'll revisit and deal with the consequences and work with the state to show that regardless of inclusionary zoning, I think our RENA numbers speak for themselves, that we're continuing to ensure that we're getting affordable housing in our community. So I think it's a reasonable recommendation to change the threshold to 60 or some number like that that's higher, where you're going to have this relatively minor impact on relatively large projects. Again, as Mayor Stillman was describing, if you have a $60 million project and 2 of the units are going to go for under market, slightly under market, your return on the investment is still, well within reason.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I go?
Yes, go ahead.
Cool. Okay, so first of all, I understand that we are doing very well in our RENA numbers, and that's a great thing. That is also just one cycle, and it takes a long time to build things and get things on the market, and we're going to have a whole new set of RENA numbers in a couple of years here that we're going to need to meet allocation for. And also just to add, yes, we use these categories of very low, moderate income. It's just, yes, that is, where people have to be at certain income levels to get those vouchers. It's just simply not realistic for the kind of rent that we see in Arcata. The market that rents bear here is incredibly high and is not necessarily equated to $1,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's just not what you see if you go look on Craigslist or Zillow or any of those things. You'll see, $1,200, $1,300 for a 1-bedroom and going up from there. And so if we're not going to use a mechanism like inclusionary zoning to put more of an onus on developers and the ones with money and the ones who are coming into or are already in our community or coming into our community to build housing, that they should also share in that burden of housing our community members. And if we're not going to put it on them, then we need to find a different mechanism, whether that's some people up here's favorite dirty word, rent control, or more aggressively pursuing land trusts and having more publicly owned properties so we can actually have real public housing, especially again in a time where I think there is a great concern that we're going to start to see a drying up of federal and state funding for housing and low-income housing, because that is not a priority of our current administration, and that's going to then need to go on the developers if we're going to develop housing like that. And I think that's why it's essential to have a mechanism like this in place to make the free market step up and be part of creating what we need for our community. And also, I'm happy. I think the idea of compromising and going up on this threshold number, I think originally when we were talking about this, we were up in the 50s, maybe 50, something like that. So, and we don't see huge projects like that in Arcata. How many units does Sorrel Place have? It has 40 something, doesn't it, Sorrel Place?
44.
Yeah, 44. So even if we set it to 50, that a building of that size, which is fairly sizable, would still not even meet that threshold. And so I think thinking about the size of buildings and how those floor plans go and what actually 40 some units looks like, 50 some unit looks like, it's not this big scary thing. We're kind of, again, and bending over and whimming to developers. And I think it can go the other way. Let's put it in place. And if we're not seeing anything getting built, and if we're hearing directly from you know, folks that want to build in this community, that is the thing. It's convenient to say that's the thing. It hasn't even happened yet. We're not going to do, right? Like, yeah, of course we're going to get emails like that. But again, this idea that it's a living document and we can see it be changed. And we did a lot of work with the Planning Commission. We seemed pretty solid that we wanted to move forward on this. And I want to also respect that recommendation from the Planning Commission. And I think that we should move forward. And I'd be happy to see that threshold go up a little bit if we can still make it happen.
It wasn't 100%. It was 5-2. I just want to point that out. Does someone else want to say something else before I?
I'd like to hear public comment, I think, now.
Okay, I have one. I want to just bring up some other things about, you know, developers, and unless you've had the opportunity to be involved in development, and now we have the new tariffs that are coming out, which is going to make everything more expensive. And also we have the loss of 1 in 4 construction workers are an undocumented immigrant. And so depending on how that affects us, it's going to raise, there was an article in the New York Times about this, how that's going to raise all the costs for building in the future. And then the state of California has the most stringent building codes at the moment, and the green building codes. And so we have a lot of things that developers have to do. And I'm sure our building inspector he's not an inspector, but nevertheless, he inspects. But he would know that how many conditions we have. And so I keep thinking we want housing, but we want to put conditions on everything too. So I'm opening it up to public comment. Who would like to speak?
I came across some information on what's going on with the low-income housing from the standpoint of the tax base. So this is the question I have for staff, that what I read was that, let's say something like Sorrel Place, 44 units, and it was like, I'm guessing it was like 22 million. Do they even pay taxes on that? Because what I came across from the state standpoint, that these low-income projects do not pay taxes, so they're not contributing to the tax base at all. So one concern I have is, if we have a lot of these projects, how are they even penciling out? Because, you know, how's the city going to afford to do all this? I mean, for example, even our water issue, we had to borrow to pay for our pension and, you know, do all this little fancy financial stuff. So that's the question I have. Are these folks that are doing these low-income projects, are they actually paying taxes on this, or are they just because of all these special, you know, incentives? Is it a wash? And I mean, this comes back kind of like 3 years ago, and from the standpoint when Danco gave their presentations on that, a lot of Wall Street people were interested in getting involved, and the New York Times, I think today, had a big article about this, that Wall Street is interested in these projects. They basically bought up all our single-family housing, and that's why a lot of young families can't get into that. So now they're getting into this low income because they see all the benefits from that standpoint. So if we're going to go this route where we have 7 stories, for example, Wall Street needs to pay for like our fire district, since we haven't solved that problem. So we need to ask a lot more questions about how the finances on all these projects. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
No one on Zoom? Okay. Then I'll bring it back to the council.
Yeah, I think right now I'm just wondering about the feasibility of anybody building anything that's 40, 50 units with the things being the way they are. So I don't know. Sarah made some really good points, as did Alex. So I'm just interested to see if we can meet in the middle. And I also certainly don't want to get into any legal trouble for something that we already committed ourselves to.
I definitely do not want to totally get rid of inclusionary zoning. I know that it's not required, but I think we not only have accountability to the housing development, but also to our constituents. They wanted that. So to take it away completely, and I know it's a living document, but But I think that for that reason, we can leave it in there, maybe have the trigger a different number, but to totally get rid of it, I don't know that I can go with that.
No, for me, it's just really, I'm clear that I want it to, that we do need to keep it, and it has to be a big enough number so that it doesn't impede smaller development, so that we can have more housing for all incomes. There's plenty of working class folks that don't make very much that also can't get into the lower income housing that need the choices where to live as well. So I'm just, for me, it's about what's that magic number, you know.
And also taking into account that a lot of those super low income housings are the home key projects. So, you know.
Does anyone have a number they want to propose? I mean, I was thinking 60, but I'm not.
I would agree with 60, 70, somewhere up there.
David said 60. I don't know. It came out of your mouth at one point, so it sounds like it was probably a number that was thrown around or talked about. I mean, and you probably don't know these things off the top of your head, David, but if you want to play encyclopedia, I mean, like, do we see housing projects that big in Arcata? Like, the only thing I can think of that probably has that many units is like the Stromba, the Foster whole big complex over there. But like, what really kind of numbers do we see in some of our local housing projects? And yeah.
I was hoping you would ask this question. No, we've actually had two in the entire time that I've worked at the city of Arcata that have been that large in a single phase. If you count the Courtyards apartments, that would have triggered it. But again, Courtyards was 100% affordable housing. But yeah, the project on the new Foster, it was 142 units. And then we had a project that was proposed behind, in the Greenview Market area by Strombeck. That was 100 units when it was proposed. They've now built out 30, and I think they're taking, or so, 30? 30-ish, and they're hitting the pause button, in part because of the market right now. But, I guess I would encourage the council to, think about this ordinance as a long-term goal, not what's going on in the market today necessarily. I do think if you set the number at 60 or 70, that you're going to be, have a high enough project count, the unit count, they're going to be a large enough investment that 3% or 6% of those units being reserved for lower income is not going to hit the pro forma. That's just the size of the project it's not going to register. The smaller projects that we were talking about earlier, certainly those are going to, feel an impact when, 3% or one of your units out of 20, two of your units out of 20 aren't paying market rent.
Well, because you have to deal with the development costs and you have to be able to recoup that. I mean, anybody, it's just like whatever you do, your dance studio, whatever it is that we have to make sure you can make it pay. And if you can't, then you just don't bother to do it. And so I think it's really important that we think about housing and the importance of housing and how we need it. So, what's the number? 70?
I like 60.
I'm okay with
Because
60.
David said 60. See, you said it. No, just kidding.
Well, then what did Joe say? If David said, we could go around and ask everyone.
The number really is a policy decision, and it's going to be, the difference between 60 and 70 is de minimis. So I would say Rochambeau for it.
I'm okay with 60.
Cool. All right. Well, then shall we move to this phase of?
The modification that you would be making is on packet page 65. It's under 932050, exempt residential project. A2, it right now reads 30. It'll read 60 if you introduce it that way.
Okay.
There's also a minor change that we're going to have to add attachment headings to to reflect what's in the ordinance, but that's non-substantive. Attachment A and attachment B for each the density bonus and inclusionary zoning.
Do you want to fix that?
You don't need to make that as part of the motion. That's just administrative.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know.
Okay, so then I will make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1575, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the land use code to update affordable housing zoning with the indicated amendment to change the threshold from 30 to 60 on packet page 65, and waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. And I also think that I need to move to adopt the CEQA determination included in the environmental review section of ordinance number 1575.
I'll second.
Okay, who seconded it? I did. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? I'll vote for it because it's 60. So thank you. We'll move on. Compromise, yes. So we have the next item on the agenda is B, consider adoption of resolution number 245-41, authorize an inter-fund loan from the wastewater fund to the water fund in the amount not to exceed $3.5 million. Thank you.
And if we could just take maybe a 5-minute break so we
that
could
would be
pull together
great.
the presentation.
We're going to recess for 5 minutes. Thank you.
doing.
So thank you all, and we will move on to old business. We'll go do number B, which is consider adopting resolution number 245-41, authorizing an interfund loan from the wastewater fund to the water fund in the amount not to exceed $3.5 million. May we have a report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. Tabitha Miller, the Finance Director. So we have talked about this at a number of meetings, and I just kind of wanted to give you and the rest of the audience review of the things that the conversations we've had regarding this particular loan. So the first thing is that the council has approved some pre-purchases of remote read meters and vaults and paid for some plan review for the steel water line replacement project. So we've already spent up to about $400,000 on that. And this was so that we could avoid some of the cost increases that we're anticipating with the tariffs and lock in those rates. So on February 5th, we also did a financial update on the water fund and the steel water line replacement project and the impact at that time that we thought from the engineer's estimate, which was at $14.5 million. We then adopted an interfund loan policy. That was just so that we had the parameters set in place so that if you choose tonight to adopt this resolution for the loan, those are in place, and we have certain standards that we have to meet, and it's very clear what's required. You also, at the last meeting, approved a contract for water and wastewater rate studies by Bartle Wells Associates, and that's so that we can get, much better information and have a complete picture of both your water and your wastewater utilities. And so that when you actually do come to the point where you consider rate changes, you have a full picture and you can look at it with both utilities in front of you and look at longer term, 10-year plus per horizons. And then the other thing that's happened that was not at a city council meeting, but I think is important, is that on March 27th, we did receive bids on the steel water line replacement project. And we'll talk a little bit about the costs that those came in on. So possible future actions, and this is just kind of giving you what sort of we see as the progression of actions. If you approve the interfund loan this evening from the wastewater fund to the water fund for $3.5 million, the next step would be staff would bring back to you the potential to award the steel water line replacement project contract to the low bidder, which we already have the low bidder in place. Then we would have at some point in the future, probably a couple months out, you'd receive an update on the water wastewater rate study, the long-range financial plans, and the rate model. So this would give you the sort of big overview of the financial options that you have available to you. You would evaluate those recommendations and the alternatives for fiscal sustainability of both water and wastewater utilities. And then the step would be to implement the agreed to action plan, and that would, if you chose, potentially include going through the Prop 218 hearing for rate increases and all of that process. Just another kind of quick overview on the steel water line replacement project. So this is 33,600 linear feet of aging steel water mains. They would be replaced with PVC pipe of the same sizes. It includes 300 new valves, 680 laterals, and 700 meter boxes, and it's the meter boxes and the valves that have been pre-purchased. Just kind of another history on the financial side of it. This was originally included in 2005 in a rate study at $1 million estimated cost for the project. In 2020, it was estimated at $5 million with an offset of $2.5 million grant that we were anticipating receiving at that time and is no longer available. The most current engineer's estimate is $14.5 million. And then on March 27th, we did receive a low bid of, the contractor piece was $10.8 million, but the total project would be $12 million. So we are $2.5 million less than the most recent engineer's estimate, and we do anticipate that that really has a lot to do with what's happened in the last couple months, just economically, a lot of money from grants and stuff changing. I think that people are a little bit more willing to come in at lower bids. Just to kind of give you a real quick review of the project cost as they stand today. Again, the current engineer's estimate is $14.5 million for the total project. The low bid was a little under $10.8 million for the construction of the project. We have those $400,000 worth of pre-purchased meters, vaults, and plan reviews. And then we're building in a 7.4% project contingency of $800,000. So we're looking at a $12 million project cost, which is 17% less than the $14.5 million or $2.5 million less. And then the source of funds that we are projecting or proposing is using the unrestricted net position from the water fund of $8.5 million. You'll remember from our financial update in February, you have about $10.2 million in total reserves. So we are, if we use $8.5 million, we are really taking all of the extra funding sources in the water fund and using it towards this project. So I just want to be clear that you'll have probably just basically working capital remaining in that fund, assuming no other changes, no other rates increases or anything else. So it does take the majority of the reserves that are available, and then we're here tonight to discuss that interfund loan from the wastewater fund to the water fund as the piece that we would need to fill in. You will remember that on February 5th, when we talked about the financial update and originally talked about the potential for this the possible loan, we were talking about $8 million. The difference, of course, is the savings here, and the $8 million also provided some seed money to fund some additional capital projects that were anticipated and projected out by our engineering department. So that is not included in the $3.5 million proposed loan. I also thought it would be important, and this is actually a graph that we talked about when we adopted the mid-year budget, but I did want to just remind you that the city has done a really good job of building up those reserves, and the whole purpose of building up those reserves in the water fund were to pay for that steel line water replacement project. And so you can see we were at less than $4 million back in 2016. Last year in fiscal year 2023, actually almost 2 years ago, you actually topped it at about 12 million. We spent some money on some additional capital projects this year, and it's down to about 10.2. And assuming that you don't do any other projects, we would end this fiscal year at about $10.8 million based on current. And again, that's assuming you don't move forward with this project. But the whole point is that the council did anticipate this project, or prior councils anticipated this project. It was built into the rates. We did save the money. The challenge is that it just is much more than we had anticipated when we looked at all these numbers. Not sure. So just real quickly, the loan itself would be up to or a maximum of $3.5 million. We anticipate that will be the amount, depending on the contingency. We would propose where the financial model here puts interest at about 4.25% because that's the current earnings from our LAIF account, which is what the investment account that we pretty much rely on our liquid money being put into. Whether or not it stays at that level or increases, I don't know, especially with the changes at the federal level. You know, things are pretty volatile as far as financial information and projections. But for 18 months of construction, you'd have about $112,000 in interest. We would charge interest only until the construction is complete. And that also gives the council time to get those rate studies back, look at what potential rates would change and put those into place. Then you would start, once the project's complete, you would start your principal and interest payments. And again, it's based on the 4.25%. It would be for 8.5 years because this is a 10-year loan and we're limiting it to that. That's about $500,000 a year. And the total cost of the loan with interest is $4.35 million. Just to cover the full repayment of the $3.5 million loan, you would need a 9% increase, a one-time 9% increase in water rates to cover that $3.5 million. for the 10-year period. Which kind of brings us to just some considerations and some thoughts on how to look at this and some things going forward that have some financial implications that we should certainly keep in mind and will keep in front of you as you make decisions regarding the water and the wastewater fund. So the first one is if the interfund loan is approved by council, you are committing to an action that will ensure that the wastewater fund is repaid. That's sort of built into the process. It's in our policy. It's in the resolution that will document the loan if you approve it. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's clear there. The one thing that we have looked at is ways to mitigate that particular rate increase and potential other rate increases for other projects in an ongoing basis and potential increases in our operating cost over the longer term. Staff has requested of Bartle Wells that they put together options for providing reduced rates to low-income customers as part of the study. One of the other options that the City Council has, we're not necessarily recommending it, but I want to make sure you know all of your options, is that you could take general funds, one-time use of your reserves there and pay off part of the loan, and you could do that at any time in the future, so that's always a possibility to you. One of the other things we've talked about, and I'll show you how this works in a slide, you could reduce water rates to offset potential increases in the water fund. And we have talked to the folks at Bartle Wells, and we've asked them to look at this as a possibility. So this is something that will probably come back to you as part of the rate study. And then the other thing that we'd like to put in the back of your mind is consider prioritizing one of the capital projects that we believe would be useful in assisting the water fund to be healthier is looking at prioritizing the meter replacement program. I think we mentioned on February 5th that one of the challenges in our water utility is that we believe that we have a lot of meters that when meters fail, they slow down, which means that they don't register the full amount of water that's used. And we have found more than anywhere else I've ever worked as a percent of the meters in the system were what we'd call dead meters that have stopped registering any use at all. And so generally, when you do a full-scale replacement of your meters, you'll see an increase in revenue simply because you're registering true water usage. And so it's a way to recoup it. It does mean, folks who may be paying less may be paying more, but at least they're paying the fair share of what they're using. So, as I said, one of the ideas on mitigating the impact of updated cost on ratepayers is to reduce your rates in your wastewater fund. And again, part of the reason that we have this potential opportunity is because you built into your rate increases that were adopted back in 2020 and then implemented over the last 5 years, rate increases to cover much of the cost of the wastewater treatment upgrade. And we were very fortunate enough to get a state loan that is covering essentially all of that cost. So you are generating operating income that is helping create a reserve in your wastewater fund. And so this is just kind of an example of how it could work. And so because the wastewater fund has higher overall revenues than your water fund, a 6% reduction in, and again, just across the board, this is simple math, and not necessarily how the rate study would detail it out, but is about $528,000, and that's what you would need to cover your annual repayment of the loan, which in full detail is $499,205, and that's at the bottom of the charts there. And if you took that same dollar value of $528,000, it would be a 9% increase on the water side of things. So you'd reduce your wastewater and increase your water rates, and the net between the funds is essentially zero. So the idea being that the water portion of your bill would increase by 9%, all things being equal. The wastewater would reduce by 6%, but dollar value, those should roughly equal out to a net increase in your total utility bill from the city of Arcata of zero. The one thing I will tell you is that we do have, well, most of our customers have water and wastewater services from us. There are a few customers, a group of customers that do have just water only, so they would see the full impact of that increase. So the staff recommendation is to approve resolution number 2541, authorizing the interfund loan from the wastewater fund to the water fund in an amount not to exceed the $3.5 million. And then we are not asking you to take this action tonight, but on April 16th, if you approve the loan, to award a contract for the steel line water replacement project to the low bidder, which again is at just under $10.8 million. I did want to just make sure, because this is, a pretty significant action on your part, and it is just one step in probably many additional steps that you'll be taking. I wanted to make sure that you understood all of your alternative actions, and of course, you are the city council, so you can take any one of these and even change them. It's really up to you as a group. But you could take no action tonight and request additional information. If there's information that you feel like you need in order to feel good about and make a decision, we could certainly bring that back to you, and at that time, you could make a decision on this item. You could wait until the rate study is complete. We're talking about probably August before that is in place, and that certainly will provide you a lot more information. And then you could do nothing and just not award the contract, and you could say sometime in the future, we'll take a look at this project. All of those things would mean that the full project that we currently have the bids for would not move forward at this time, and whether or not, if we rebid it as the same project, it would come out at the same amount, I don't know. We do appear to be lucky at this point to have times change a little bit, and we do have a better price than we anticipated based on the engineer's estimate. One of the other things you could do, and again, this isn't recommended, certainly not by our engineering folks or the folks that are working in the field in the water department, to rebid the project but reduce the scope, which basically means that you would reduce what work you did, and so that you didn't have to take the loan from the wastewater fund. So you would just, the project would be scaled back. And then finally, I'd mentioned this before, you could supplement the wastewater loan with general fund contribution. And again, staff is not recommending this, but it is an option, because the one thing about the general fund reserves that you have in place is that they are there, and you could choose to use these in whatever increment the council felt was necessary. But once you spend that money, it can't be spent on other projects, and your general fund money is the one with the most flexibility. So, it's money and resources you would not have in the future. But you could eliminate the need for the interfund loan, or you could reduce the amount of rate increase that would be necessary by taking a smaller amount. $2 million would reduce it. A $2 million loan would reduce it to 5% Yes, a $2 million loan. I'm sorry, $2 million from the general fund would reduce the rate increase in the water fund to 5%, and a $1 million contribution from the general fund would reduce it to 6.3% instead of the nearly 9%. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions in council? Anybody? Oh, go ahead, Meredith.
So many questions, because this is like a hard decision to make. So we have a bid for $12 million. If tariffs went into effect, is that a solid 12 million? Could it go up like tomorrow with increased prices?
So the bid is firm. So if you enter into a contract based on the work and the product that are in the current bid, and the construction is 10.8 million. The other is money is the thing that could increase the cost is, and that's why there is that $800,000 in contingency, is we have to remember that these are really old water lines that are underground. So we don't know necessarily what we're going to find when they dig them up, and in some cases if they're 50 or 100 years old. So if there was a need to change the contingency, there is that possibility. I know that in conversations with the city engineer and the city manager, we've talked about the fact that we would probably just make the project work, that we would have to do what it takes to not increase it. But you do need to be aware that anytime you dig up stuff that's been buried for 100 years, you can't guarantee what's there.
Sure. And so on that same page, if we went out to rebid to change the scope of the project to only like cover the $8.5 million that we have, with circumstances being as they are, it could really fluctuate and it could be just as expensive.
It could be, yeah, you could go back out to bid, get the same bid you have now and be doing less work. It's the challenge we have right now is because, you know, things are in flux and because markets are really skittish. It could go, you could do much better or you could do much worse at a future bid. And I can't tell you, I can't give you any indication.
Yeah, no, I know.
No crystal ball, huh?
Not on this one.
Well, I think you have to look at the materials that are being used and where it comes from, and are there tariffs on it, and that'll make a difference.
The good thing is it is PVC pipe, so it's not steel pipe. So
that's good to know.
That is very good.
Okay, so what is the risk of, I mean, if we wait for a completed study, that's not going to tell us anything about replacement of pipe. Like, they need to be replaced. The rate study is only basically a rate study. So waiting for that is not going to really tell us anything other than the amount we need to.
You'll have a better understanding of the financial picture, but it's not going to change the need for this project, and it's not going to change the pricing of the project. All of those things are, you know, separate.
Ugh, past councils, right? Why did they?
So I guess my thought about making the scope of work smaller is the work needs to be done, whether it happens now or later. And as pointed out, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we do have a number now if we lock that in. The likelihood that it's going to be less, probably not. More likely it's going to be more. It needs to get done. So my thought is, let's do it.
And I know that staff, and like I said, particularly our city engineer who's not here tonight, would fully agree with you on that.
Thank you. Stacy?
And I also talked to staff quite a bit about this, and so I fully acknowledge that it needs to be done. It's 5 years past due, so I get that, and I understand the increases in prices. And the only problem that I have is that this, for me, I want to keep this separate than raising the rates. So when I talked to staff about that, when we talked about, well, if you reduce the price of the wastewater, like that can like increase the regular water, that'll zero it out for customers. And if we were just like committed to something like that in this moment, I'm fine. But the problem that I would have is when we talk about, even if we have to raise the rates, we still have to have an authentic community discussion about that. And so I don't want to make a decision tonight, and then August comes and we say, well, you know, we get the rate study back and it's probably going to say we need to raise rates. And then we go to engage with the community on this, and we're told, well, you already agreed to the steel line replacement, so you pretty much have to do this. I think that will be very upsetting to the community. Like, there's no one here complaining about the possibility of raising rates because we're not talking about it. But so does it make sense what I'm saying? I just don't want to commit to something that's like, oh, well, you guys already kind of did commit to that, because then we'd have a room full of people. So I'm happy to move forward as long as we can keep these two things separate.
So I will remind you, and again, one of the things that you can supplement all or a portion of this from general funds. And again, we're not recommending that, and we're not recommending you commit to it, but it is something that it is that, and the potential for reducing the rates by offsetting it with wastewater are two options that you do have. I mean, so you're not absolutely set on having to increase rates, but we do have to commit to making sure that we repay the loan.
Yeah, if we do the offset, which I'm sure to the public, they probably think that we're like lost our minds up here because they were talking about borrowing from water to wastewater. And it's
realize.
just, there are certain things you cannot commingle of funds. So that's why it sounds like crazy talk up here. So yes, if we could finesse it so that our community wasn't noticing a difference in their bills, I don't think they're going to care to which fund they're paying as long as the bills don't change in this moment. I'm fine. I don't want to borrow money from the general fund because, as you pointed out, that is the money that we have the most control over. And there will be some things that happen that are unexpected. We're guaranteed that just in this time of life. So, yeah, that's where I stand.
I just had a question. So there are things that you've recommended, which Stacy just brought up, to help with the rates, like, offering those who qualify for PG&E care would have reduced water rates. Another would be to have it, because it's been covered by grants, the reduction of the wastewater rates would offset, which is what we did just discuss. There just seems like there are ways that we can, and maybe I'm having a delusion of grandeur, but it seems like there might be a way to not have to increase rates. Is that possible? I mean,
to kind of like
For everybody.
for this particular to complete this particular
to-
project, I think you can. I certainly think that there are alternatives that you would not need to raise rates. I think realistically, just from the increased cost and the additional capital, there's probably some level of rate increases in your water fund that you're going to have you will look at. But I don't know that you have to do it because of the action you're taking tonight, or you may even be able to delay those or build those in at a way that's much more affordable over time. So, I don't want to say that you won't find yourself in a financial position where that's something that really is needed. But for the action you're taking tonight to complete this project, I think there are certainly alternatives that you can avoid that. And like I said, between those multiple items, and if you're offsetting if we reduce the rates in wastewater and increase the rates in the water department, you probably like your need for the low income options, that may be something you do, but it's probably not going to be needed because you're looking at a net increase at that point in the bill of zero.
So-
it doesn't mean you can't, again, it doesn't mean you can't pursue it, but it's not necessarily needed if you just commit to reducing rates in wastewater, so you increase them in water to pay back the loan.
So I'm also thinking of the meter replacement. So while those who will be paying more because they weren't being charged enough, that's not really increasing rates for them. What
No.
it is leveling the playing field so that everybody pays what they're actually using. And in that case, it's going to bring in more revenue. We could use that revenue possibly to supplement those who are low income?
Probably not direct. We can't directly, but we can look at if you're really interested in, and committed to looking at programs to assist low income. That is, we've asked the folks at Barter Wells to make sure that they look at all those opportunities. And so again, that'll be something that would be something you would build into whatever you do with rates after the rate study comes out.
And I would like to save that option for if we do have to, when we have the rate study, if we have to talk about raising rates, then I would like to be able to have that in our back pocket for folks that have low income. So I'd like to save that for them in case we do need to raise the rates and not do it for this portion.
Yeah, I just so struggle with raising rates. I just heard that LIHEAP just got canceled, which helps like people with their PG&E bills. We're going to have to probably increase garbage. It's so much. So, yeah. But I also understand that this is something that needs to be done because it could be catastrophic if we wait any longer, just with the staff hours for fixing things that there's another earthquake or, what else? I mean, these things have to be done.
So I'm going to open it up to anyone that would like to address this, public comment on this item.
By saying, I really appreciate your presentations. I always think they're really thorough. But the issue I have is from the strategic planning, and I'm not saying you guys, because we're talking about 2 decades here, but in 2005, 1 million, 2020, 5 million. I mean, that was just a disaster from the standpoint that nobody made that decision to do it. But the part that you need to accept that you took ownership of is that we had millions of dollars that you took out from the water and the wastewater treatment to pay for your pension. That was a decision you guys made. So looking back on that, I don't know financially if that was such a wise decision, because I think what was being done there was to save the interest on the money and to pay that off. But in that time period, labor's gone way up, and you can see there's a tariff now. So I don't think that saved us any money. And I'll have to say that the few people that I've talked to, they think I'm just crazy when I say that you guys took money from the water fund and the wastewater fund and paid the pension. They're going, no, they didn't do that. And I'm going, yes, they did. So there's just a lot of people that don't know anything about what's going on from the standpoint. I'd also address from the standpoint, you guys put a lot of money into repaving all our streets. I mean, G Street is beautiful. So are you telling me that we're going to start digging up all these streets that we repave now and do this project? I mean, that's part of the strategic planning too that I have an issue with, that wasn't done before the paving, because that's not how it's supposed to be done. You're not supposed to spend all this money on paving and then just go ahead and dig it all up again. So I don't know what the answer is. It's just a big mess right now. But people are not going to be happy having their rates go up, and it's just good luck.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Me.
Yes, sir.
First of all, you don't have to dig up our streets because we have the ability to camera the system and insert rather than dig up and remove, which I would highly recommend. By the way, my name's Mark Raymond. I live in Sunset neighborhood. My thoughts about this are the original infrastructure probably has to be addressed, but why not take it in phases where you deal with that? Where does it come from? Mad River? Are we talking about to McKinleyville and to Eureka, as well as Arcata, Manila? How far is this project going?
We probably won't have an answer for that right now.
All right. So my recommendation is we have the ability to camera these systems, find out what's going on. That's what we do every day with replacing a sewer lateral to the street and putting in a meter at the sidewalk. It's a no-brainer. So you don't have to dig up streets. You can follow the existing.
Sir, would you speak to us, please?
All right.
Thank you.
Well, he's the one who
I
said
know, he
dig
brought
up
it up,
streets.
but yes. You could.
And I agree. We have a lot of our streets repaved. The one that we need is between J Street and Larson Park, Grant Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyway, we have the ability to inspect these older systems without digging up the world now. And we could take it in phases where we go, okay, this is pertinent. We could hold off on this. Sunset neighborhood, what, 45? It was
Sorry, your time is up, sir, but
All
thank
right.
you very much.
You got my
Yes,
thoughts.
I understand. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? Is there anyone on Zoom?
No hands on Zoom.
All right, thank you. And so I'm bringing it back to the council.
I do just want to make a clarifying comment. It's been explained before, but I'll explain it again. Tabitha has explained it. When a statement is made that we just took money from water and we paid pensions, no, that yes, it happened, and no, it did not, because you can't just do that. But employees get paid from the funds in which the areas they work, which also includes retirement. So Tabitha made it very clear that we were paying down pension liabilities of people that worked in that department that we could legally do that with. So, and I still believe that it was a good financial decision to do, even with what we're dealing now. So I don't regret that. I just want you to know that. So thank you for bringing that opportunity to us.
Any comments from anybody else? Yes.
I just want, because I haven't talked a lot on this issue, I agree with everything that Stacy said, and that, I think it's going to be important that when that rate study does come out, that we take a look at that and bring the public in and reevaluate what we need to do. If, this stealing from Peter to pay Paul is enough and we don't need to raise rates and they tell us we don't, that's great. But if we do, then we need to, come openly to the public and meet about that and have some conversations and look at the implications of that. But I definitely think this is the way to move forward this evening. I think this is a great first step in getting this project done, getting it out of the way. And really, we've been talking about infrastructure, I feel like, a lot tonight, and we need to replace aging infrastructure. And that's our duty for future councils when we get left with things that past councils have done. We're going to make it easy for future councils by updating our infrastructure. So.
Could I just ask a clarifying question? Item 4 on our page 75 of it says, establish a policy that requires area development to cover the full costs of adding the additional needed capacity to the system. So are we talking about new people who are hooking up and they pay for it?
Yeah, so you're talking about what we call capacity fees, which is typically when you have new development, you will charge a fee to hook up to your water and or sewer utilities, and the idea behind that fee is to cover the cost of the system that they're buying into and the increased cost that they're going to generate on the system. And part of your rate study is a study of the current capacity fees for wastewater and water, and they'll bring back what they would recommend as a fee to recoup those costs fully, and then you'll have to make a decision as to whether or not you want to implement higher rates there. It does have the negative on this that usually comes out is that it's passed on to developers, so it adds cost to building. So everything circles around. But it is one way to subsidize your rate increases, is to collect it from those fees.
And cities are known for doing that, is putting it on the backs of the developer in this case. And so that's why I think about development and how much it costs. So anything else you wanted to say about this? Ask me more questions. What about you?
Sure. I move that we consider adopting resolution number 245-41, authorizing an interfund loan from the wastewater fund to the water fund in an amount not to exceed $3.5 million.
I'll second.
Okay,
Can I interrupt before the vote? The motion was to consider adopting or to adopt the resolution?
It says consider on our agenda, but I would imagine you don't want to use that word.
It would be to adopt.
It would be to adopt.
Okay, so I'll amend that to say to adopt resolution.
And I'll still second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go on to our next item under new business, appoint 3 new members to the Planning Commission for terms expiring March 31st, 2029. So we interviewed today 4 people that were interested in the Planning Commission. 3 of them were already planning commissioners, and they came in for an interview. And we interviewed somebody that's not on the Planning Commission, but has served us for a long time in the city of Arcata on one of our committees. So do you wish to do each one individually, or how do you wish to do it, council members? One at a time?
They're all the same date, so it might be easy if we do them all together. If they're all for a term that ends March 31st, 2029.
Okay, so which three do you want to appoint?
I will really say that I'm glad that we had the process of interviewing everybody. I really appreciated everybody's answers. That being said, I think that we have a really strong planning commission now, and I think that I'd like to see them kind of finish what they started with the general plan. So I will go ahead and make a motion to reappoint. Yeah.
You
We
can
can
have a motion on the floor, and you can take comment afterwards.
So I will make that motion to appoint Peter Lehman, Matthew Simmons, and Dan Tagney to the Planning Commission with terms ending March 31st, 2029.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Thank you. We can have discussion.
Sure. Before we go to the public comment, I just wanted to also thank Sheldon, is currently serving on the Parks and Rec Committee. It's good to know that he's interested in doing other things, and I'm sure he will make a great planning commissioner at some point in time. But I'm the reason I was willing to second the motion was because I do agree with Councilmember Matthews that we do have a cohesive group that's working well together. We have several new members that have come on in the past couple of years, and they are just, finishing up still some of the work that they've been doing. And so for those reasons, I'd like to, I support the motion that was made and seconded.
Some of our commissioners that have come on, they've been a more recent, probably within the last 6 months or less. So having time now for public comment on this motion, please.
Okay, I'm going to address this because this has been an issue in the past from the standpoint of, one, qualifications. And I've always repeated this that we need people that actually have taken at least one class in urban design to be on but obviously that hasn't worked out because I don't think anybody's done that. So the next qualification I like to see in candidates is that they're independent and they're just not yes people that are going to go along, that we're going to ask questions. And unfortunately, some of our existing commissioners, we'll give an example from the standpoint of the fire district, giving a presentation in front of them, and I was there, had no questions for the fire district from the standpoint of how they're going to address 7-story buildings, 6-story buildings. In fact, at the very end of their presentation, their exact words was, "We don't want any more Sorrel Places at this time. We cannot we can't serve that. If anything happens, we're going to lose either one of our fire district personnel, or the public is going to die." That's what they said at that presentation. And so our commissioners were not asking any questions related to that. And I also brought this up later on, right before they voted for the gateway. I said, did you read the letter from the fire district from the standpoint of them asking you not to approve this until we have the study completed and we get the funding? And no questions. It only took them like 5 minutes to pass that. So those are the kinds of qualifications that we need in planning commission people, that they're independent, they're going to ask these important questions, because what happens if something was really built at 7 stories at this moment? I don't think it's going to happen.
I forgot to time you, so I have to assume that you're timing.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at the same too, so it's kind of hard.
You're thinking, how long can you go on?
It's kind of hard, but so that's my example where we haven't had people asking these very serious questions, and they're serious questions because of
So thank you. I'm just going to have to.
Well, we didn't really have a time, so did I hit 2 minutes or not?
I'm sure you have. Do you want another minute?
Yeah, let's give me another minute there, okay?
Let me find,
Alex?
okay, well, just go ahead and we'll watch you.
Okay, so that fire is one issue. Another issue is from the standpoint of, we never had anybody asking questions on something very important from the wastewater treatment standpoint. I asked it several times, does all this development from the gateway and the planning and for the general plan, do we have the capacity for their wastewater treatment plant? And the answer was, we have it in the dry season. Now, that was a very important point that never got answered by anybody on the Planning Commission, that these existing ones, because we had a very disastrous thing that happened in the first of the year where we released thousands and thousands of gallons of raw sewage went into our bay. And, you know, there's no answer from anybody from that standpoint. So these are the issues that Planning Commission should be addressing. Why was all this wastewater released when we haven't
Thank
had
you.
any?
You've had your next minute. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council.
There's nobody on Zoom, but can I just ask a clarifying question on who seconded? I heard Councilmember Schaefer's second, but okay, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
I just wanted to second it before we change the subject, so sorry if I interrupted you, but I was ready to do it to get it motioned and seconded, and then, yeah, so. Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is compliance with the new legal obligations, public hearings on staff vacancies, and the city's recruitment and retention efforts to comply with new legal obligations. Assembly Bill 2561 Government Code Section 3502.3. So may we have a staff report, please?
Hello, good evening. I'm Kara Vink. I am the Human Resources Director. For everyone here probably knows, but maybe not the people in the public. So yes, I'm here today to ask you to open the public hearing.
Okay, do you want the public hearing open right now? Microphone? Would you like the public hearing open right now, or would you like to make any comment?
The presentation has to be done during the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. So I'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this issue?
Well, is there a presentation that goes with it that maybe
Yes,
would be
there
worthwhile to see
is
before
a
this
presentation that I will give during the public hearing.
You'll give
Yes.
it-
So we're in the public
Thank you.
hearing.
This is all
You
brand
want
new.
to give it now? Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
this is all brand new. So,
Okay.
yes, I believe it was in November, a law passed that changed the Meyer-Millis-Brown Act, which is the state law that governs how public employers employee relations with their employees. And one of the new requirement is that annually the public employer has to, during a public hearing, go over the staff vacancies and the recruitment and retention efforts of the public employer. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And it, oops. Okay, so for the city of Arcata, we have a total of 135 budgeted authorized full-time positions. And the types of positions that we have, we provide the following public services. There are specific things in the law that we are required to cover during this public hearing. And so some of these slides are meant to satisfy particular points, new points in the law. And so we have water, wastewater services. Of course, we have positions in public safety. We have positions to maintain our roads. We have recreation, parks, facilities, building and engineering, community planning, and we have parks, forest, and green spaces that are maintained by our budgeted positions. So we took a snapshot in December of 2024 of our vacancies that we had at that particular time. and we had 3 vacancies, and that is pretty average for what the city has. We had a dispatcher, a water wastewater mechanic, 1, 2, and we had a juvenile diversion counselor, 1, 2. And so our vacancy rate was 2.29%, which is very good, actually. The city, just in my own personal experience, has a very, very low vacancy rate and good retention rate of employees. So one of the requirements is to list out by bargaining unit the percentage of vacancies for each bargaining unit. So for the Arcata Police Association, we had 1 vacancy, and so that was 2.5% of their total positions. For Operating Engineers Local 3, there was 1 position, and that was 1.6% of their total positions. And for Management and Confidential, there was 1, and that was 2.9% of their 34. So there are additional requirements that I would be sharing more information if our vacancies exceeded 20% in any one bargaining unit, but because we have such a low vacancy rate, that is not required of us. So good news for me. So then I'm going to talk a little bit about our recruitment process. So when a vacancy is approved to be hired, we of course open a recruitment, and there's a number of different type of recruitments. There could be a open recruitment that is open to the public. It could be a promotional recruitment where it is limited to city employees. And once we have the recruitment open and we close it, we establish an eligibility list by a number of different ways. There could be a written exam, an oral exam, some type of testing to gauge where the person would fall. These are scored, and so they are based on the person's ability to do the position. And then there's an additional interview that happens, which is called the selection interview. And there could be additional hands-on testing or real-life example kind of interviews sometimes we do for the more technical positions. And then the department head or the department head designee would recommend a candidate to move forward with a contingent offer. They would go through a background process that includes a medical, physical, and fingerprinting. And then once we get all of the information back and the candidate passes, then we make them the formal offer, and we negotiate a start date for that particular position. So as you can see, this is a somewhat lengthy process, but we do our best to streamline it so that our departments are not left without a vital position for any great length of time. And so of the 3 vacancies, 2 of them were filled with an external recruitment. So that means that we had an existing list that we used to interview that person and to select that person from that eligibility list. There was 1 vacancy that is not going to be filled, and that was due to the loss of Measure Z funding from the county, and that was the juvenile diversion counselor. So that was the status of those. Part of the law is for us to do an analysis of what are possible barriers to our hiring process. So even though we have a low vacancy rate, it is something that we're required to do. And I think the one barrier that I could really identify was that we only have 1 local occupational health provider in this area, and all of the public employers use that one occupational health provider, and sometimes scheduling is an issue. But there really is no one else, and so our process is, and it's an important process, that people go through a medical examination to ensure that they have the ability to do the position with or without an accommodation. And so so hopefully we will get more healthcare providers in our community. That would be very important. So I wanted to go over to some of the recruitment incentives and retention incentives that the city is currently offering. And just so this has really helped the police department. They did have a very large vacancy. I think it was like in 2022, 2023. And then this was implemented and they have been able to get stabilized. So one of the things that we offer new police recruits is that we do offer them academy sponsorship. And we offer our academy students pay and benefits while in the academy. They do not receive the police officer salary. They receive a lower salary, but they are eligible for benefits. And this really helps the individual to sustain while they're in the academy. Police officers who have already graduated the academy receive a $3,000 hiring bonus paid over 18 months. If we are lucky enough to get a lateral transfer of an experienced police officer, they receive $50,000 hiring bonus paid over 30 months. And then existing police officers receive a retention bonus of $7,500 annually paid, and it was paid in June of 2024. It will be paid in May or June of 2025 and of 2026. And this was all approved by the council. There's also the dispatcher hiring incentives. We are now, I think, going to be fully staffed in dispatch. And so a new dispatcher is eligible to receive a hiring bonus of $3,000 paid over 12 months. And a lateral transfer dispatcher who has experience in public law enforcement has the ability to receive a $7,000 bonus paid over 12 months. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is that I think that we have some best practices here in Arcata, and that helps us keep our vacancy rate low, is that we have vacancy planning, meaning that we're always listening for if somebody's leaving, or we know there's going to be promotions or there's a transfer or anything like that. We go ahead and kind of put that on our list and start planning the time frame of where we can fit that into our recruitments. Recruitments are a priority because we know that we need to support the departments in getting the services done to the community. One of the things that has worked very well is an overhire or a double fill for a short period of time. In some positions, it takes an incredibly long time for the person to come up to speed to do the position. So having some form of double fill helps the city retain its service level, and that has worked well. And then we offer a competitive salary and benefits for the region. And so this is another way of looking at our retention statistics. Like I already said, we had a vacancy rate of 2.29%, and of course that does equate to the staff turnover rate as well. And again, our retention efforts, we do offer competitive salary and benefits. We do offer career growth through flex classes and promotional opportunities. And I really say that our department heads, our city supervisors and management, and the city employees, we all build a culture of City of Arcata is a great place to work. And I think having that type of environment where individuals are happy at work really makes it less likely that employees are going to leave. Okay, so that is the presentation. Are there any questions about that?
Are there any questions from the council?
Okay.
Well, now I can open up.
Yes.
I had a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
These when we pay for them to go to the academy, albeit it's a reduced salary, do they sign any contract? Is there any guarantee that they're going to come work for us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So I can open it up for public comment?
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's open for public comment.
Okay, the first question I would have is, how are you advertising these positions? Yeah, the time would be good. How are you advertising these positions? Do you have a website where you're putting all these jobs up? I mean, I seem to recall ads like at the Lost Coast, on the North Coast Journal. The last time I saw one was for your Equity Arcata management position. There was like at $70,000 or $80,000 a year. That was like the last time I saw something advertised. And also from the standpoint of, how are these jobs being generated? I've had, I think environmental director for the last 3 years has talked about our street sweeper, how we don't have a driver full-time, and then we got another sweeper that doesn't require a class, special class driving license, but we didn't seem to have someone to drive that. So I'm just curious, for 3 years, we've kind of heard that same story, and is there a job for that position? And I'd also bring up, since you brought up the police department and with the bonus system, and I was here for that, and when you voted on that, and I seem to remember our police chief, the first time he came in here, he gave us a summary that half of our police force were on leave for different reasons. So I'm just curious how that whole, I mean, I was kind of shocked that many people in a department could be out on leave, and it wasn't really at that time going to help us too much with all these new hires because of that situation. So I'm just curious about what the parameters of bonuses and all that, because if somebody gets on the force and then they're just staying home and they're being paid, I mean, I don't know how well the public would like that. So it seems to me we need to have a little bit more details. I mean, I'm just kind of shocked from the standpoint because I've worked with a company with exactly the same amount of workforce as the city, and I don't really ever call someone that lenient as far as people had to report to work. And I'd also point out, it just seems like we have a lot of management positions and not enough blue collar workers that are doing the job in the city, whether it's street sweepers or, I mean, there's a lot of like weeds growing up in the gutters. And I talk to these individuals and they just say, which this is the truth, we don't have enough staff to do the job. So to me, it just seems like you're not hiring enough on the lower end of people for the services, and maybe you have too many management positions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. How would the council like to proceed?
What do we need to do? We just.
Oh,
Thank
I
you,
can move-
City
I
of
can-
Arcata, for being
well, I
such
have
a
to
great place to work. Thanks, Merritt, for taking over,
Yeah, so I think if we could close the public hearing, and then there is a resolution to be adopted.
Okay, at this time, I'll close the public hearing, and we will move back to adopting a resolution, which
I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 245-40, resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata to adopt a policy to be in compliance with Government Code Section 3502.3 and we already did that, so.
is there,
I'll second that.
okay, there's a second. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion's carried. We'll move on to find ordinance number 1577 to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and introduce ordinance number 1577, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending Arcata Municipal Code regulations regarding the Board of Appeals. May we have a presentation, please? Thank you.
Hi, how are you doing today? Thanks for having me. Save the best for last, as always. I appreciate it. This is really quite basic, so I'll just try to summarize it in as few words as possible and then be available for questions. So there were originally two boards, Board of Appeals, Board of Permit Appeals, and an Accessibility Appeals Board. The issue came up or was brought to my attention that one of the seats needed to be filled. There was some inconsistencies with the language in the Permit Appeals Board. So that's the first half of these changes are to address the inconsistencies. So we're in compliance with building codes and health and safety codes. Very minor. It just has to do with who can sit on the board. If you have questions, I'll answer those for you. Then the second board, basically the history there is when accessibility standards came out in California in 1982. It was kind of ahead of the curve. California was before the federal ADA. So it was confusing. It was challenging. And then federal standards came out in 1991, and then they're updated in 2010. Since then, I think pretty well it's established. There's a lot less confusion. The Access Appeals Board has not convened since I've been here, and I've heard more than 10 years. And by changing the language in the Board of Permit Appeals to just be a general Board of Appeals, it covers any need for that. And the language in state law for Access Appeals Board is a may, not a shall. So we are updating our policies to be in compliance with state laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Questions? Okay, a motion, and then we will have public comment.
I'll make a motion to find ordinance number 1577 to be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and to introduce ordinance number 1577, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending Arcata Municipal Code regulations regarding the Board of Appeals.
Second?
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Just going to the recommendation, the full title of the ordinance is listed there. I believe I just heard a motion for the title of the staff report.
Did I miss something? I apologize.
How would you like it read? Because if we say find, it says find ordinance exempt, and so, do you want to approve it?
So I think we'd want to read it from the recommendation, which is just under the title and item 4.
Okay,
for the
so
ordinance
introduce
portion.
ordinance number 1577, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata amending Arcata Municipal Code regulations regarding the Board of Appeals, Title II, Administration, Chapter 3, Boards, Commissions, and Committees, and Task Forces, and Article 5 and 6, waive the reading of text and consent to read by title only.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the motion before we open it for public comment? Okay, it's open for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item? Is there anyone on Zoom?
No hands on Zoom.
Okay, so may I have everyone who wants to support this motion say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those who don't? It passes, and thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great to see you. It's great to be here. Have a lovely night.
So the next item is oral and written communications. It's continued. The city council values your comments. The public comment period allows people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please know that pursuant to the Brown Act, the council cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the agenda. The council may respond to statements. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start out commenting about what Scott brought up the beginning, because this is an issue that I've been talking about for 3 years now in front of you, from the standpoint of a number of vehicles that just blow through stop signs. They run into empty cars that are just parked on the street. I mean, I have seen so many from my intersection. I was just shocked to hear what was going on at his intersection. So, you know, something needs to be done, but, you know, I maybe you're working on it, but you're not there. And, you know, he said it perfectly. It's like, you know, if something isn't done, someone's going to be injured, someone's going to be killed, and those things have already happened in the past. I mean, that's what I've been like yelling about for the last 3 years. And along with the noise issue with the mufflers too, it's all the same issue. It isn't like, you know, like the officers have to go out and focus on one thing. You know, I've already said this to the police department. I said, here's Officer Daggett, you know, it's like I got my window rolled down a little bit, and I'm listening for if someone yells help. I'm looking for people staring at their phones, but it isn't being done, you know, and I don't know if it's ever going to be done. You know, I'm just tired of showing up and bringing this subject up. And I'd also say, you know, it's in the last few years, it seems like it's like the wild, wild west. I mean, you made a decision on the plaza, so things have changed there. And I would like to comment a little bit about the plaza because I walk across there every day. And I'll have to say in the last week, you know, last week it was a young black male who was being arrested right when I was walking through there. And then this week on G Street, right in front of the theater, was a young black woman who was being arrested, and she was yelling, help, help, you know, no, no, no. So I would like to point out that, you know, that some of these people on the plaza are locals that are have mental ill problems. And I don't like to really see someone who's mentally ill, you know, the resources that it takes to arrest them, take them to jail, and then I see the same person out the next day, because I look at that as like, why weren't they focused on the cars that are running through the streets, the signs that are going to potentially kill people? It's just like a waste of resources from my standpoint. They're mentally ill, and I don't see Arcata House. I don't see any of this stuff that you guys are saying that they're getting help. It's just the police are having to do everything. I'm not blaming the police, but they're just having to do everything, and I don't see this extra help happening.
Thank you very much. Next, please. Thank you for waiting.
Hello, council members and mayor. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah. So this last weekend.
Oh, I thought I pressed it.
Sorry about that. It's okay. This last weekend was the Muslim holiday of Eid, and it is the end of Ramadan, which is one of the holiest months. The Arcata and Gaza City Sister City project sent food and toys for kids out there, and they had a wonderful celebration in Gaza City. I wanted to just come here today and tell you, council members, that I would love for Arcata to be a sister city with Gaza City in Palestine. So that is just me formally saying that this is something that I would really like for our city council to adopt. Have a great night. I cede the rest of my time.
Thank you very much. Next, please. And thank you.
Hello, my name is Ren Romer. I would like to express my support for Arcata becoming a sister city with Gaza. The Lancet Journal published that 186,000 people have been killed as a result of the ongoing ethnic cleansing in Palestine. just from this most recent conflict. This is not in the interest of the people who live here. It is a waste of taxpayer dollars that could be used to enrich the lives of people in this area and all across the country. Arcata becoming a sister city with Gaza would express support for the Palestinian people and support to end this conflict, which is a needless waste of resources and a waste of life all the way across the planet, which is far from where we are right here. And that is all I would like to say.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello. I am a student at Cal Poly Humboldt. I'm here to express my support for the sister city proposal. I think I'm sure you've heard this, but I think it's worth reinforcing that there is no neutrality during genocide. And even though I've only been here for 2 semesters, I have seen the people of Arcata show up to events all across the city and say over and over that we will not be quiet while children are targeted and killed and families wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of bombs. The Sister City proposal is a way to make a tangible difference and to fight against genocide. So I would like to support that proposal.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hello, I'm Rainer Shea, and I'm again calling for the city of Arcata to become a sister city with Gaza City. The recent successes of the Arcata Sister City movement's organizers in bringing aid to Gazans have shown that everything a sister city entails is realistic and legal. And there have been attempts to sow doubt about whether a sister city project would be tenable or whether it would involve some sort of illegal activities. But no, this is a project to help make sure that as few Gazans as possible perish from their horrific circumstances. And this project has been gaining ever more support among Humboldt residents. Enacting a Gaza Sister City initiative is the right thing to do, and it's a politically viable thing to do. Thank you.
And thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Well, I would like to thank all of you for waiting through the whole meeting. So now, is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, we have hands on Zoom. Okay. Ellen, please go ahead.
Hi, City Council. I also personally would like to express my support for a sister city in Palestine. But the reason that I'm calling you today is for a new campaign that we just started to urge government employees invested in CalPERS for their retirement to demand that CalPERS divest from genocide. This was just launched last week. You can find more info at Divest Humboldt on Instagram. And any state employee, which includes a lot of the local employees for the local governments who are invested in CalPERS, can send this letter to CalPERS that we have already drafted. And it's based on their latest earnings reports and investment portfolio. So it's well researched and good citations, and it's a really good letter that all you have to do is copy, paste, and hit send. I know that each of you city council members received this request from me with the letter attached. And unfortunately, the only person I have heard back from is Tabitha Miller, who explained in no uncertain terms that divesting from genocide just doesn't make sense for the city's bottom line. On the same day that I received Tabitha's cold-hearted reply, I was also seeing news that 200 children and 100 women had been murdered by Israel in Gaza that day. This is important because CalPERS is invested in companies that are providing weapons and heavy equipment to the genocidal apartheid state of Israel, making Arcata invested in this as well. You all signed a ceasefire resolution just over a year ago, and although a ceasefire deal was reached this winter, Israel has since abandoned their agreement and continued massacring civilians in Gaza. Divestment is a critical tool for applying peaceful, nonviolent pressure on Israel to abide its agreements and halt its genocidal acts. And in fact, it is the law of the land. The International Court of Justice found Israel guilty of apartheid against Palestinians last July, and that its military occupation and annexation of Palestinian territory is illegal. This means that all states, local governments, corporations, and institutions must immediately end all forms of complicity with Israel's illegal military settlement and apartheid activities. And yes, you are investing in CalPERS for your retirement, and that makes you complicit. I'm really unsettled that the only response I've received from the city has been this numbers reply explaining how the city's in so much debt you can't afford to make decisions in alignment with your own investment policy and your own
Thank you very
resolution.
much for your comments. Thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Yes, Shannon, please go ahead.
Hi, Council. I wanted to give an update. The Redwood Peace and Justice Coalition held an amazing workshop at Humboldt State. I guess it's Cal Poly Humboldt now, the library. It was well attended, although I noticed none of you were there. And it was very informative and, very, very sad, but also very inspirational. The first 2 hours, we listened to a woman named Dr. Sui Yang, and she is originally from South Korea. She was raised as a Christian Zionist, and she was an orthopedic surgeon who specialized in treating hand and foot injuries. And she was located in the Sabra and Shatila camp in Lebanon during the massacre of 1982. That was a year before I was born, but I have since read about it, and it is horrific. If you do not know what I'm talking about, please look it up. The Palestinian people have been enduring decades of torture and genocide and harm beyond any comprehension. So it was just an amazing event. I really strongly encourage you to engage with your community members who are overwhelmingly showing support for this cause. We also heard from someone in Jordan who is working with people on the ground in Gaza from the Gaza government, and they are trying to raise funds to bring water distribution to people living in tents. For me, as a person who works with communities, getting access to clean water, this really struck home. Um, I had a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that even during a genocide, the people in Gaza do not have access to anything for free. They actually have to pay like 5 to 10 times more what would normally be the cost for basic necessities for human life, such as water. So I just cannot urge you enough to engage with your community members and listen to us, and please support the cause that these amazing people in our community are doing. Secondly, please consider sending that letter to CalPERS. This is not the first time this has been brought up with CalPERS. I used to work for the state of California, and this came up, I think it was 2021. Of course, the Israel lobbies were really good at getting it pushed down, but we have to keep pushing back. I sent the letter. I have an investment in CalPERS. It's not that hard to do. We have to understand that the weapons that are being used on the Palestinians with our tax dollars will be used on us very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else on Zoom?
Yes, Gracie, please go ahead. Gracie, please unmute. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gracie here in Arcata. I urge City Council to send in their letters to CalPERS to divest from Israel. I don't want my taxpayer dollars, and I'm hoping that the majority of Arcata doesn't want their tax dollars being sent to the apartheid state of Israel to bomb and kill people in Palestine, Palestinians. Right now, we just got the report in that Israel just killed 60 people in a UN clinic, including aid workers, medics, and children, parents, and fathers. Yeah, I would hope that City Council would urge CalPERS to divest from Israel. We do not need our taxpayer money going there. And it will help to, yes, we do have power. We do have a say. Don't feel like sending this letter doesn't do anything. It's to apply pressure, and I hope everybody here has a conscience and does the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have someone else on Zoom?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move on to council reports. Our reports shall be specifically limited to council or city business and shall not request or lead to actions by the council at this meeting. So shall we start with you, Sarah?
Sure. First of all, there's a chamber mixer tomorrow. It's at the Harvest Hub, which was the City of Arcata's Business of the Year at the Business Chamber Awards this year. So they're doing awesome stuff out there and need all of our support right now in the face of growing food insecurity in our community and help for farmers. So that's going to be out at the NCGA Harvest Hub at 5:30. And it's a great opportunity to check out their really cool space and their programs going on out there, and also connect with your local business community. Things that I have been doing. We had our Equity Arcata board meeting this last Wednesday, and it was a good chance to also reflect on the event that I was able to participate in, and Kimberly and Meredith were there as well, and Merritt was on one of our panels that they did in our Sanctuary City event that Centro del Pueblo and Equity Arcata put on over at the D Street Neighborhood Center. It was an amazing event and really showed the potential for, Equity Arcata to kind of work with these local community groups to be this convening space and have really good information and conversations, and also got to hear kind of in the second half. The first half was a presentation by our police department and city managers, both Merritt from here and then Miles from Eureka, presenting on just what being a sanctuary city means and how the police, operate in that situation, and, the laws that are in place both in Arcata, Humboldt County, California, that kind of add those layers of protection from ICE raids and other such things. And so I got to ask some questions of the folks on stage, and big shout out to Lieutenant Chris Ortega, who brought his bilingual skills and just his relationships with the community up to the forefront, which was so great. And I even got to practice some of my Spanish skills as well, unexpectedly, and ask some questions in Spanish as well. And so our staff and police department did a really good job answering those questions. And then we really got to hear some super powerful community testimony the second half, and just hear from folks in the community about what different service organizations and, healthcare and schools are doing to protect folks, but also, many immigrants in our community sharing their day-to-day experience and talking about, what's been going on in their lives and how they've been feeling. And so it was just like such an amazing space to bring everybody together. And I hope to see more of that. And I hope to see Equity Arcata participate in more events like that. And then that kind of also led to some excitement and planning, hopefully around an upcoming Sanctuary Day that will be eventually happening at the Plaza during Farmers Market. Haven't picked a date yet, but looking forward to that. So, I think that's all I got, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you. Stacy?
So I was gone for a large portion in between meetings on a family trip. And so I would say probably the meeting that I regret or event missing the most is the Sanctuary event. I felt honored to be part of the initial discussions and planning with Centro del Pueblo. And but it is my understanding, as you pointed out, that this is just the first of many things that we have planned just to continue to show up for our community and show our support. So I look forward to those. And I have a whole slew of meetings lined up, so I'm sure I'll have much more to report out on next time.
Thank you. Kimberly?
I attended the Redwood Economic Development Commission meeting, monthly meeting. I also attended a Redwood Economic Development Loan Committee meeting. I, too, attended the Arcata Sanctuary City. I just want to commend Councilmember Schaefer on her exemplary job in facilitating that meeting. And then also wanted to mention just Councilmember Atkins Salzar actually initiated this whole thing in the very, very beginning. So thank you for making this all happen. What else? Oh, I'm looking forward to attending the Port of Humboldt Bay Offshore Wind Development meeting with the Pacific Northwest Strategy. There's an event, and it's going to be 2 days, both Friday and Saturday. And also today, I attended a Humboldt Equity Consortium meeting. Actually, it was hosted over in Valley West. That's all I have.
Thank you. Meredith?
Yeah, today I got to represent the city of Arcata at a County of Humboldt-sponsored community economic development meeting where they discussed the preliminary survey findings about some challenges that the county is having with housing, economic challenges, workforce challenges, and trying to get some priorities for community and economic development, which is something that I'm very passionate about. Also, I attended on my policy committee for housing, community, and economic development down in Burbank and got to find out about some crazy bills that are coming down the pipeline. Like SB 39 is one that wants to get rid of coastal commission requirements, which is a little bit insane. So it's really important to pay attention to all these bills that are coming down the pipeline because that will affect our housing. I got a chance to, again, represent Arcata at Cal Poly Spring Preview Day, which is wonderful. I got to talk to some potential incoming Cal Poly scholars about all the wonderful things about Arcata. So that was really great to be there, as my son will probably be matriculating there next year. I want to remind everybody that the summer markets start for Farmers Market on Saturday. So they start at 9 instead of 10. There'll be live music. And it's really the start of summer markets, which I'm super excited about. And we've been working with the North Coast Growers Association to, again, keep the plaza closed to traffic and make some accommodations such as bigger walkways so you can see brick and mortar stores and more handicap parking. So all of those great things that the NCGA has been working on. I want to encourage people to go to some of the great kinetic mixers that are coming down the pipeline. It's really important to support them. And also I joined the North Coast Repertory Theater Board last week because, again, the local theater is another thing that is really important that we continue to support. So if you have some spare time, volunteer for a local board, volunteer for kinetics, volunteer for an event, and get involved in your community. And that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you. So today, HTA, or Humboldt Transit Authority, accepted the transfer of the Mad River Transit System to the Humboldt Transit Authority by a majority vote. And the yellow buses will still be seen. They aren't going to be wrapped or painted a new color. So we'll see them here and there. And I really love seeing our electric bus. It goes by so often. It's such a beautiful looking bus. The first hydrogen bus has arrived. It's being tested on the streets and the highways. It looks very modern. It's white right now. It doesn't have any markings, so you might see it. And this summer in July, HTA will be 50 years old, and they'll have a celebration going on with that. And I attended a Child Care Champions business lunch today just because I'm somewhat concerned about seeing housing or buildings that are not being used for child care. So I went to that. And there are a couple things I want to ask you all about. And one, I want to ask staff about the study with the fire department. Are we ever going to see that we paid for that study, the three-way funded study?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of, we've gone through one internal review. There's comments in there. We're finishing the second internal review, so we're getting closer, working on scheduling that second internal review meeting now. So we're getting closer.
Okay, thank you. Also, I saw that the North Coast rep, and they called me on the phone, that they're really interested in having city council members participate, and I'm assuming you're going to.
It's the first night of Passover, so I will be not able to.
Well, they want city council members to participate in their event that they're having, and they have quite a few Eureka city council members, and they don't have any Arcata. Have you all gotten, you haven't gotten emails? No idea what you're
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Forward it.
I'll find it and
received
send
a
it.
phone
But
call.
they're doing an event, maybe you know about it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have another commitment, but if I can,
Because I heard that you were going to be part of it. But anyway,
no.
but what it is that we will.
News to me.
City council members, they want to do a play, and they'll have real actors, and then they'll have the other actors, and how they'll weave it all together, and they're going to do it 4 times a year. So maybe you can talk more about it, because now you're a new board member. Do you know about that? If not, I'll find it and send it. The other thing is, we've been getting quite a few letters concerning what our last couple of speakers addressed, and I forwarded those on to our finance director, thinking that she could answer them appropriately with the information, and she has, and they aren't very, I've seen that they aren't too happy with the answers. The other, I wanted to say that Caltrans is going to be doing, accepting comments on State Highway 255 or Samoa Boulevard or Navy Base Road or whatever you want to call it, and through May 23rd. And I'm wondering if we should write a letter from the city, and I'm asking your feelings if you'd like to, adding bike lanes and pedestrian ways, plus some crosswalks when you get to Manila. So would you like me to write a letter on behalf of the city and comments, or will you want to do your own individual ones?
I don't think we can talk about it since it's not agendized.
Can't you shake your heads and say, write a letter?
Staff received the letter, and we'll be looking at it to provide comments.
Okay. Well, we also had, so we can't do any of this, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. The other thing is, we had a request about having a pride flag for the month of June. So we did it last year, and I'm assuming we can't talk about it, but I'm bringing it up anyway. And so you can all decide what you want to do, and we were told that they have a new flag that they would actually provide for us if we're willing to do that. So maybe we need to have that as agenda item so that we can actually talk about it.
Noted. And last time that was done, it was put on the consent calendar ahead of the Pride Month, so that's something that we do again if we get.
And it'll be a
buy-in.
new, they want to put in a new flag, and it'll look different. I don't know what it'll look like, because it's not what I saw.
And we've received that communication.
So, the other thing is, we had a speaker saying there were 2 council members that were interested in a sister city, putting it on, having something about the sister city, and I'm just wondering if that's true. And if so, maybe you could let me know sometime along the line that you'd like to have it on the agenda, and we can see what we can do about that. And so that's it.
And I'll just add the point, and I don't know if this is, we can talk about it offline, but if there's like a desire to appoint a point person to check in with that group and liaise with them, I would be happy to do that, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know if we can discuss it because it's not on the agenda.
Which group? Excuse me?
The Sister City Palestine.
Okay.
The city of Gaza. But it's not on the agenda, and so I brought a lot of things up we can't talk about. Okay, goodbye, good night. We're going to just talk about well, we can do this. Our next meetings are going to be for the future meetings for budget study session is April 9th, then another one on May 8th, and another one on the 14th.
And just to tell the public, I will not be at the first of those study sessions. I will be out of town on a family trip.
And I will not be at the first one either. So then we have closed sessions. There are none. Closed session reports. There are none, and we're adjourned.
Wait, before you adjourn, we did have closed sessions, but there was nothing.
But not right now.
Prior to the meeting.
Oh, you
We
wanted
didn't
to-
announce it at the beginning,
Okay.
so if you could announce our closed session and
Okay.
that there was nothing to report out, that would be great.
Okay, well, we had closed sessions, and we discussed litigation, and we have nothing to report on that. And we also interviewed planning commissioners, and then we voted on those that we chose.
And the bargaining, labor
Oh,
negotiations.
yeah, the bargaining, yes. Well, I don't have that in front of me right now, but we did do bargaining, and we did that with our HR person. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, and I don't think there was anything to report out.
There isn't anything. That's it. That's it. I'm trying to end the meeting. What else do you have? Done. Good night. Bye. Adjourned.